start recording. Three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show. I'm your host Ben, and this is a soccer podcast, Rex. But I think going forward, I might be spending my Saturdays watching college football instead. The way things are going with Liverpool, I kind of miss Liverpool playing Man City. Jokes aside, we're gonna get into that game. We'll get into a lot of crazy things actually happened this week. It was almost like a statement week for a bunch of teams. And I don't know if you're joining me in misery or not, because Arsenal did drop points, but they're still top of the table. So that said, welcome back, Rex.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I was a little disappointed, a little frustrated, and I'm a little worried. We'll get into it. Arsenal, the last four games, have only scored one goal, so I don't know. We'll see. We'll get into it. They're a little leggy, and I have some other theories too that I'm excited to talk to you about.
Ooh, all right. Well, there we go. Get to get into that. And like I said, there were a number of crazy results. And so one thing I want to do is do like a story of the week, and then I do want to go over the midweek results. We don't necessarily have to get too into depth, but that kind of did frame some of the headlines that maybe we weren't expecting. One of them being a certain manager got sacked. And that actually does lead into what I guess I was going to say is a number of coaches got results, I think, when they really needed them most. So I'm thinking of Lampard and maybe Brendan Rodgers. And then on the flip side, a couple of coaches got very untimely, poorly results. Obviously Gerard being the obvious one, but also Jesse Marsch is starting to have some trouble, and we're a little
Yeah.
worried about that. So I don't know. It seems some of these clubs are either eager to wait for the World Cup or not. So Marsh has basically 3 games to maybe turn this around, and if he doesn't, it could be uh-oh times. So, what do you got, Rex?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. I'm kind of glad we're not talking about the midweek games. There was only 13 goals scored. So there's minus one fixture, of course, but the weekend games, 29 goals were scored. So, I'm kind of glad we're getting away from the low scoring tallies because last week we had 15 goals scored,
Mm-hmm.
and then midweek 13. So it's good to be back almost close to 30 goals. And then also just with Monday kind of fresh in my mind. I don't know what handball is anymore. We'll talk about what VAR did.
Yeah,
Um,
good call.
and now Unai Emery going to be the new coach at Aston Villa. He's going to be starting November 1st. So that's going to be very interesting. He's a top class coach, I think. He didn't do that well at Arsenal, but
Hmm.
he's a really good coach. So this is going to be interesting.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on that. I mean, I think it's almost a statement hire where it's like we're wondering if Aston Villa just need to find a way to stay up. I mean, hiring him, to me, it almost seems like they have Europe ambitions.
Mm,
If they can turn things around. I mean, I can't imagine he's just leaving Villarreal to do that. I mean, I know they're only like seventh or
yeah.
eighth in La Liga, but they're only, I think it's 4 or 5 points away from top three or top four in La Liga,
Mhm.
and I think it's actually a pretty big loss for La Liga, which
Yeah.
we can maybe get into. Uh, but that said, we will go over quickly with the midweek results. Brighton drew Forest 0-0, so De Zerbi still yet to get that first win. Crystal Palace beat Wolves 2-1. Southampton beat Bournemouth 1-0 with a that was actually a pretty big result for Hasenhüttl. So been a pretty good week actually for them with getting that draw with Arsenal. Brentford
Mhm.
drew Chelsea 0-0, so that was a good result for Brentford. They weren't Jeremy wasn't really expecting to get any kind of points from that game, so at least he got something before before the Villa game. Liverpool beat West Ham, courtesy of Darwin Núñez header, and Allison actually saved a PK in this game too. So it actually Liverpool could have been in worse shape than they were. That City performance was, it feels like a month ago.
Mhm.
Newcastle went on to beat Everton 1-0 with a beautiful goal from Miguel Almiron, and he is just firing left and right now. He also scored. He also scored for Spurs, and then probably the big result was Man United beating Spurs 2-0. And a few teams had really good weeks in this. Fulham being one to get to, Leicester being one. They won both, and a few teams had basically the opposite, where Spurs losing both, and kind of their back line getting a little exposed, I think, and that maybe showed in the Newcastle game as well. And
Yeah.
Leicester won 2-0, beating Jesse Marsh's Leeds, and then Fulham just clobbered Aston Villa. and pretty much sealed Gerard's fate. And so
Yeah.
that kind of set us up for. I called it Statement Saturday. I think that's a pretty good way to frame it because yeah, we're getting closer to the World Cup. It's only 3 match days left, and a few of these teams maybe wanted to move up the table and improve prove where they were because another thing to say is the table is so congested right now. If you can just get a run of like 2 or 3 wins in a row, you can go from maybe mid-table to being in like the top 6 or 7. It seems. And on the flip side, you can be like Brighton. Brighton, I think, were fourth when De Zerbi took over, and because of the run of form they've had, I think they're ninth now. So
Ooh.
there's a lot of fluctuation in the table, and so we'll get started. I think with the first game, Man City and Brighton. This one ends 3-1. I think. I think that's maybe a little harsh. I think Brighton were a little bit better on that. Maybe the big storyline was how Man City basically didn't have a game for like that entire week, and so Pep had a
Mhm.
chance to think about things, and he did go back to a 4-3-3 with Akanji at right back, Cancelo back on the left, and then Kevin De Bruyne, Rodri, and Bernardo in midfield, and then maybe the change was Mahrez and Grealish being the front attackers with Holland. And Brighton were unchanged from what they did versus Nottingham Forest, and yeah, it's one of those things where at least they did get a goal in this game, but it seems De Zerbi's still kind of struggling a little bit. You're not getting well back to fire,
Mhm.
but no, it started off with Holland getting the first goal in a bit of almost a freak like fashion. I don't know if you want to talk about this, Rex, but I mean this was I want to say it was like video game like because like the way Ederson was able to pick him out with a great long ball, and then I mean Holland basically just completely bulldozers Adam Webster like he's just not there. Like I'm trying to
Mhm.
someone like Suarez I don't think would have been able to score this kind of goal to be honest, and
Mhm.
maybe there's calls that it could have been a foul on him. But I mean, it was very similar, I thought, maybe to what Callum Wilson did with Lloris, the way he kind of like ran into him. But yeah, Holland's able to get by him. It looks like Sanchez maybe had a chance to get a touch on the ball because he came out. But at the same time, he can't connect with Holland because I think he'd be sent off at that point. So
Yeah,
Sanchez was kind of caught
definitely.
in no man's land, and so I mean it's unlucky for Brighton at that point, and then City were able to get a second with a PK. I actually do think this was pretty bad on VAR. I think Bernardo Silva is clever and he sticks out his leg and basically falls over Lewis Dunk's leg more than Lewis Dunk actually kicking Silva, and
Yeah.
Holland actually that was a beautiful PK. So don't want to take anything away from that, but it was one of those where Brighton were actually making City struggle. I thought, and even for that good play, they had nothing to show for it, being down to 2-0. And then they were able to get one back with Trussard. Maybe something we can talk about is the one negative to playing Akanji at right back, and this is maybe this was in Pep's thoughts why he played Cancelo there versus Liverpool last week. Is Akanji got burned here a little bit? He got bullied by Pascal Gross in the beginning, and then he wasn't able to get tight enough on Trussard, and Trussard was able to take advantage of that. And then City basically closed it off with Kevin De Bruyne wonder shot. Um, the only thing to really touch on this is Kevin De Bruyne has all the space in the world, but at the same time, Caicedo does a really good job of closing him down, I think. And just the reason why this goal happens, is because De Bruyne's first touch is amazing. He's able to basically cushion the ball, and within the same stride, he's able to get the shot off really, really quickly.
Mhm.
If any kind of heavy touch, I don't think this goal happens, or I don't think he's able to get the shot off. And so one of those things where like we haven't necessarily seen this point of this side of De Bruyne's game uh, so far this season.
Yeah,
He's
good
been
point.
more the assist guy, and so this is one of those where he reminded us that he's still got that in his locker. So we'll just kind of open it up there. Sorry, Rex, just wanted to kind of do the recap, and I don't know what were your all thoughts.
Yeah, I really do agree with you. I think Man City are really missing Kyle Walker. He's just so fast too that he can cover for people going up and attack. He can be the last line of defense, and you'd back him in a foot race with with anyone almost. So yeah, they're definitely missing him. But it's something that it's maybe a little chink in the armor for City. We know how good they are attacking, especially they've just scored a boatload of goals. maybe there's a little bit of a weakness there, and I think Liverpool too kind of hopefully set a template to how you can kind of control Holland and how you can possibly beat City. And yeah, like this, like you said, the scoreline. It's a little flattering for City. Brighton was in the game 2-1 in the second half, and Brighton actually had more possession, which is kind of interesting. But
Yeah.
I do want to touch on to Zerbi because I mean, yeah, he hasn't won yet. He's got a couple draws. I think he's coached 5 games, and just really like he hasn't gotten a lot of the people going. I kind of looked at like McAllister and maybe like Pascal Gross, and since Trezeguet took over, both of them have no goals and no assist. And in the 6 games where Potter was in charge, McAllister McAllister had 4 goals, and Pascal Gross had 3 goals and 2 assists in the first six
Mm.
games under Potter. So it's just more of why, it's just Potter had him firing on all cylinders. It's just unfortunate because we do think Zerbe's a really good coach. He did a lot of good things at Shakhtar. They beat Real Madrid in the Champions League last year, but maybe Potter's just a little better because he got a lot of these guys firing. McAllister's 4 goals. He scored 5 all last year. So I also think it's kind of a shame. I wish we had kind of seen where Brighton would have finished with Potter because things were really starting to heat up for
I
him.
agree with that.
So
Hmm.
yeah, it's just kind of disappointing. But I still think they're a tough team. I mean, a lot of draws. I think 3 draws and 2 losses in the last 5. So I think they're still a tough team, and maybe Deserby can get them going. But man, I really wish we could have seen where they would have finished with Potter. They were just starting to heat up. They were really fun to watch. Still got a lot of good players. Like Trossard's really fun to watch as well. But performances have dropped off a little bit, and the goals and assists and some of these guys that were carrying them early on in the season.
Well, I think Trossard's been the main guy. It seems when he's able to get looks on goal, they look dangerous, and when he's not, they it seems like they struggled. In that Forest game that they drew 0-0, you saw Trussard actually get a couple really good looks in. He just they were either really good saves or they just like missed over the bar. Um, well, you mentioned a couple guys that have since stopped firing for them. I think Welbeck would be another one to include because it seems
Yeah.
he's kind of been off it a little bit, which isn't a good sign because we expected him to maybe suffer a little bit when it came to like fitness. He's not always been fit, but he's been fit for these games. Yeah, that's maybe a little bit of a concern. I mean, you touched on
Yeah.
it a little bit. One I do want to highlight some of the stats. I mean, Man City not having the majority of possession is unique, and Man City basically having 368 passes with 83% accuracy is unique to me. I
Mm.
can't remember a time when Man City kind of struggled a little bit. Brighton were almost cheeky in the way that they defended City when they were trying to build up. It was almost like man to man, and really it's unfortunate that the City have Holland because I don't think that first goal. I don't think they would have been able to score with anyone else.
Mhm.
Because like Brighton are to do this man to man stuff, they have to play a super high line. And unfortunately, another thing to do is they didn't put any pressure on Ederson, so Ederson had time to look up, and you could see that Holland was able to do this. So the only negative I would say is you need to almost have a sweeper keeper to be able to quickly to run off his line to maybe stop that kind of ball because that's the only way to really. They basically went over Brighton's press. Brighton was man marking everyone, and the City were really struggling to pass in a way we normally don't always see. It was a little different. And so the reason they were able to do that is because they let Ederson just have the ball any time he wanted to. They didn't put a man on Ederson.
And he could
Um,
pick out a pass like we saw.
right.
And Ben, you kind of you have issues with Robert Sanchez in goal for Brighton, right?
Well, it just seems he does have a bit of a mistake in him. He is a good shot stopper. But
Yeah.
it seems like you disagree. You made a comment about the goalkeepers union. I thought that was funny.
Well, I'll tell
Um,
you, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree because you think he could use the improvement with his feet, which I think is absolutely correct. But I do think he's the best Brighton goalkeeper they've had in a long time. Matt Ryan was pretty good. I think Sanchez is better. Shot stopping, like you said, and he got his first cap for Spain in the summer. So I do think he's a really good keeper. But yeah, he's got to be better with his feet, and he does. He is prone to a mistake. He kind of made a mistake in this one too because I feel like he kind of just he rushed out And even though the PK wasn't called on him, I mean, it could have been, and he kind of rushed out, a little blood to the head moment, kind of. But yeah, I mean, I think he's the best keeper they've had, so I don't think they can really necessarily improve there. Not yet. Maybe if they finish a little higher, but
Mhm.
he does have a mistake in him, especially if you're going to play like a high line against City. He does kind of have to play the sweepers keeper, and he's probably going to make some mistakes, unfortunately.
I mean, because you mentioned after the Liverpool game, you didn't want to be the next team to play City because you figured they were going to really be firing, and that didn't happen. I mean, it was 10 shots and 4 on target. Um,
Yeah.
and it was just, I mean, it was interesting to see Jack Grealish get a start again. We haven't really seen him in a while. I think maybe you saw why. I mean, what do you think of Grealish at the moment?
I mean, yeah, Foden is much better. And Mars is actually playing well too. So I kind of feel like Grealish is going to be frozen out of the squad, and maybe just
Hmm?
like late game cameos, maybe, which I think he would be better at, honestly, because I just think Foden offers a lot more than Grealish does. I don't know, Ben. Maybe Pep was like, well, he could be resting Foden also, but maybe he thought Grealish, his dribbling ability, maybe would match up well against like Solly March and Veltman on that right side. I don't know, but
Hmm.
I would have gone with Foden there. But maybe he's just trying to rest him. Foden's still young, and they got a lot of games. So maybe that's what Pep was trying to do. But man, I mean, you would think Grealish would do a lot better with Holland in the middle. Just pump balls to him, and you're gonna get assists. It feels like, and Grealish hasn't necessarily done a lot this year. So it's kind of a make or break year for Grealish at City, especially with Holland now.
I think so because I mean, you look at where maybe City could improve. I do think it's maybe that left wing spot because I think Pep likes Foden on the right, and so
Yeah,
I think of someone at like Caradona at or Creature. I can't say that. Kritas
for
Scalia. At Napoli, who this guy I think is what people think Grealish is. And he plays on the right and he takes people on for fun. It seems like maybe there is a time or there is a way to stop City a little bit because their wingers aren't really able to beat people 1v1. So if you can stay compact and like you said, you can stick with Holland a little bit. It's not the easiest thing to do. You can maybe there is maybe a weakness there, like you said. Another thing I want to say is something we saw versus Newcastle is another thing I think we saw in this game is because Kevin De Bruyne is playing right central midfield, at least when Pep does this 4-3-3. What that does is he eventually does kind of move to the center a little bit, and he's not really tracking back and defending. So that
yeah.
really does that puts a lot of pressure on that right winger to track back. So Mahrez, Foden, whoever it is, they need to be good defensively too to help out the fullback on that side because Akanji got run over. He had no help, and so I think that kind of showed up in this game as well.
Yeah, and that's the side Trossard was bombing up and down too.
Uh huh.
The side with Maras and Akanji. So yeah, I mean, it's a chink in City's armor. It might be a small one, but at least there's a vulnerability there.
And let's see, is that I guess maybe that's it to kind of talk about. I mean, is there anything else you want to maybe mention about Brighton?
Ooh, I mean, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. They are a tough team, but I don't know. It seems like they're going to be kind of in that lower middle zone now without Potter.
It does feel
And
that way.
I
Yeah,
briefly want to touch on Holland just real quick. The goals he's scoring, I feel like we talk about it every week, but he's got 17 right now, and at this pace, the projected total for just Premier League goals would be 58. And the last two Golden Boots, the winner scored 23 goals, and Holland already has 17, so he's six away from the previous two seasons' Golden Boot totals, which is just crazy. And then Messi's total goal record for goals in a season
I think
is
it's
73, which is just unbelievable.
in a
Maybe he'll
season.
try to beat that.
I know he
See,
had
yeah,
he had like
or it could
90
be a full
plus.
calendar
He had
year.
90 plus in a calendar year. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's what it is. Yeah, he had 73 in one like full season, which is just insane. And Holland could beat that. So, also it was Pep's 600th city goal. So that was interesting too. Lots of goals scored for Pep.
that's one way to put it. I mean, I didn't even think about this, but it's possible Holland can even get that before because he's got 3 games to go. He can get that
Hmm.
before the World Cup starts.
which is
Um,
insane. Yeah,
well,
it's crazy.
that's a negative. We'll move on to Arsenal and Southampton. I think it's probably about the similar lineup we would expect from Arsenal and Southampton because no Bella Casetta Car or Sar was put in, and Elianusi was also kind of moved in, and man, did he have a good game.
He
Um,
did, yeah.
but
Yeah,
it's
the assist.
but it started with Arsenal getting a really early goal. It's a great shotgun strike. It's Ben White actually was able to get free down the wing. It's one of the issues I've maybe had with playing Ben White in this kind of at the right back spot. Is he doesn't? I feel like he doesn't do this enough. But it's a great cross by him, and the ball almost bounces before Shaka hits it. So like this is a pretty hard goal to do, and I think it's his fourth or fifth for Shaka. So it's good that he's playing forward, and it's also good that he's putting some of these chances away. And it feels like I mean, they've definitely needed that. But unfortunately, because Arsenal weren't able to eventually get that second, they were able to keep Southampton in the game, and that showed that ended up costing them a little bit with a
Definitely.
wonderful goal by Stuart Armstrong. This is I put it in the script. It's a Man City like goal because the movement starts from the keeper just passing the ball out wide, and then Salisu does a forward pass to I think Joe Aribo, and Joe Aribo demos the ball, confusing everyone in Arsenal. I think it goes to Adam Armstrong, and he gets the ball out wide as well. And then they're able to, I think it's Elianusi. Yeah, he's able to carry the ball to Tomiyasu. Tommy he freezes Tomiyasu, and he basically freezes Gabriel too. Gabriel's kind of caught in
Yeah.
no man's land, and Stuart Armstrong is able to make a disguise run behind all of them. And it's a first. Instead of taking a touch, he tries to hit it first time and into the corner, and there's really nothing that Ramsdale can do. So it's a
Yeah,
really
it
good
kinda
goal.
caught Ramsdale off guard too, yeah, because he shot so early.
So it's a really good goal. And then it looked like Arsenal maybe had secured the points at the end. Tierney had finally made a run in behind and squared a ball to Odegaard. But unfortunately, it was disallowed because it does look like the ball did cross out of
Yeah,
bounds, but it was close,
definitely.
to be honest.
Yeah, it was close. Yeah, and it was a good ball. Tierney was, like, on the ground sliding for it, and it went right to Odegaard, but, yeah, definitely out of bounds. But Ben, you touched on, like, I mean, you touched on the Arsenal was looking good in the beginning, scored a goal. But we know too in the Premier League, it doesn't really matter if you're bossing the game around. If you can't score goals when you're on top, then anything can happen. And we kind of saw that in the second
I
half.
think so.
Southampton were dominant, completely like reversed the role. Arsenal looked a little leggy, and Arsenal got punished for not putting some goals away in the first half. I think it was a frustrating day for sure from an Arsenal standpoint. At least we didn't lose, but I mean, they had the lead, and just to come out in the second half and just look so leggy and so tired. And I mentioned in the beginning of the show, they've scored one goal in their last four games straight, and that's against Bodo Glimt and European teams in Europa League. So I don't know. They're looking a little leggy. I don't think you can really go and score one goal a game and win a bunch. I mean, they won three out of the four that they scored one goal in, but
Yeah, I think it was one goal
eventually, it's
versus
going to
Leeds
catch
as
up.
well, and yeah,
Yeah,
one goal versus PSP.
it's all 1-0 wins,
Hmm.
but just one mistake or one piece of brilliance from the other team, and it's tied up. So I'm really concerned. Just the fixtures are piling up, and they do look leggy. I'm interested to see with a game Thursday if Arteta will really rotate the squad because it's kind of been the same guys playing a lot, and if they don't start like the other day in Europe on Thursday, like Jesus came in off the bench, a bunch Odegaard came in off the bench because it was 1-0, so he wasn't really necessarily able to fully rest them.
I
So I
was
don't know, they're looking leggy, and I'm kind of concerned.
Yeah, I was stunned actually by the starting lineup he played versus PSV. Now, Andrew was actually with me, and he said something I didn't even know about. Basically, it's important to get first place in the group because if you get second place, you go to a playoff with like the Champions League teams, and so that's two extra games on the schedule. So
Ooh.
it's actually it actually is important to get this done and dusted if you can now. So maybe
Hmm.
that's the reason why he risked Jesus.
Yeah,
I think he rested Gabriel Martinelli, but
he
he ended
did
up coming
finally.
on
Yeah,
because
but he started Saka, and Saka and Martinelli played just a bunch too.
and Odegaard. I think Odegaard played or started
Yeah,
um,
he came off the bench, I
bench.
think.
Okay, yeah, Fabio. Yeah. I mean,
But yeah, that is a good theory, Ben. Because then on the backside, maybe your last two games, you can kind of in Europe, you can kind of rest them if first place is bagged up.
Hmm. I mean, one thing to maybe touch on is I'm looking at 12 shots and only three on target, and a number of these were really good chances. And when you watch Arsenal, that is kind of, I don't want to say you get Brighton vibes, but you are seeing you're seeing so many touches inside the opponent's box where they are to create a really good chance, and then they aren't able to necessarily put them away, finish them. And I don't want to necessarily touch on Jesus, not necessarily to like I don't say bully him, target him either. But for him to lead the line, you almost feel like your number nine needs to put some of these chances away. And so I mentioned it last week. I would prefer to maybe see Jesus play with Nketiah somehow. And I feel like that might take away Odegaard. But one thing I was thinking of is you could maybe do what did I put? I put a back three. So if you had a back three and then you had Saka and Martinelli as wingbacks, you had Partey and Xhaka in the middle, and then you had Odegaard as kind of like the 10 with Nketiah and Jesus as the two strikers ahead. And you
Mm.
basically you would have it would be a fluid front three, but you'd still have. I feel like Martinelli and Saka could play a ringback role. I mean,
Yeah,
what do you think of that?
well, they have briefly this year, but I don't know. I think maybe Arteta is just really pleased with Martinelli and Saka, their production up the pitch with their goals and assists. So maybe he's kind of like,
Hmm.
I want them up in the attack. I don't know because Jesus and Nketiah have played together, but it was kind of like Nketiah was on the left
Yeah,
wing
and Nketiah
side.
played instead of a Martinelli in a 4-2-3-1.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In Europe, yeah, and I don't know. I like Nketiah more central, so that'd be something interesting to see. And they definitely Arsenal have the ability to do it because you would do your three center backs would be Gabriel, Saliba, and White, and that would be solid. Or you can even plug Tomiyasu in there if
And I
you
almost
wanted.
feel like
So
Ben White would maybe do better in a back three, to be honest. I
yeah,
mean, you could still maybe get
I think
forward.
so.
I'd still like it to be pretty fluid. I also think the wingbacks, Saka and Martinelli, could also go forward. They would just have to do some kind of defensive duty.
Yeah,
Um, but I mean, it's because it looked like Jesus was even through on goal in the second half, and it seemed, it is harsh to kind of touch, like, again, to focus on him. But I feel like a better first touch, there's no reason for Elyounoussi to catch him, as good of a run back
yeah,
as that is by Elyounoussi. I feel like if he's got a stronger first touch, he's able to sprint to the ball, but because the ball is too close to him, he has to almost slow down, and that's what
mhm,
allows Elyounoussi to catch up to him. And it's like these are
yeah.
margins. I mean, it's small. I mean, Jesus does still get a shot off that just Elyounoussi is able to block it, but it's
Mhm.
like those kind of margins where it almost matters, like, right?
Yeah, totally. And he had a couple other shots that were saved by Azuna in goal. And now it's kind of a bit of a scoring drought for Jesus. It's 5 games straight without a goal, but that kind of includes like 20 minutes off the bench in Europe. So it's 3 straight though in the EPL without a goal.
Hmm.
I think he's got 5 goals and 4 assists this year. So sometimes even if he's not scoring, he can produce assists. But yeah, I mean, 3 games in the EPL without a goal, that's a decent scoring drop for a striker. So, hopefully he can get things going. I think he will. He just works really hard, and even if he doesn't get on the score sheet, he's such an influential player this season for them. That it doesn't necessarily matter all the time if he's not getting goals and assists. But yeah, I mean, anytime it's 3 goals without scoring in the EPL for a striker, you start to get a little worried. But there's a lot of games to score and kind of get out of that funk. And he's trying to make the Brazilian team too.
And I mean, for Arsenal too. I mean, they've then maybe not necessarily playing their best, but at the same time, they still have that 2 point lead over City. I think they are leading in their Europa game, and they're doing all this without Zinchenko. I think Zinchenko kind of
Yeah,
changes how you look too, at least
yeah, he's a miss
keeping the
for
ball,
sure.
because
So he might be back like right before the World Cup is what I'm back in training
ooh,
before the World Cup.
I didn't realize
So
it was
I,
that serious and that long an injury. Um,
yeah, I didn't know either, but I mean, this 3 weeks is all that's left before the World Cup.
yep.
So
Hmm.
I don't think he can get quite up to speed, game speed, in that time. But just to have him back in training would be great because yeah, I think we definitely need him for sure. Tomiyasu got kind of burned on that goal. Maybe Zinchenko there doesn't. Who knows?
Well, another thing too is like it's against like maybe more offensive teams. You can maybe see where Tomiyasu would work. Like Tomiyasu did really well with Salah, I remember. But
Yeah.
this was a kind of game where I'm going to get. This is going to be a similar theme. I'll get when we get to Liverpool. Is when you're playing like basically a 4-4-2 block. You need the to create width somewhere, and sometimes you need to almost have overlapping width. And one thing you didn't necessarily see is Tomiyasu getting forward enough. And so, I mean, and one thing you did see when Tierney got in is he
Yeah.
did offer that. And so I'm wondering if maybe
That's a good
Arteta
call.
should have done that maybe a little earlier, or maybe even played Tierney.
Yeah. I think you're right. Well, the weird thing was watching the game. Tierney came on and Nketiah came on, and the announcer was he was saying he was disappointed with the way the subs were playing, but I kind of disagreed. I thought Nketiah came on with intent, and then I thought the same thing. I thought Tierney that he might have been better suited to start that game because he was bombing down the left side
Hmm.
and he started immediately pumping in crosses. You saw that one, the ball that went out. There was a goal. So yeah, I kind of think maybe Tierney should have started that one, but Arteta's very concerned, I think, with keeping his minutes down and just making
That's
sure he
understandable.
doesn't get hurt this year because the kind of injuries he's been having every season, it could kind of derail his career. So I think Arteta's just being really safe there. But again, Zinchenko comes back. That just really helps everything. It helps Tierney because you don't, Tomiyasu versus Tierney, there's a bit of a drop off there, but Zinchenko versus Tierney, not really a lot of drop off. So that would definitely help to have him back. And also Smith Rowe too. I think he's another one that will be back
Absolutely.
in
Yeah.
training, December-y time. So I don't know. We'll see. Those will kind of be like maybe new January, signings when they come back healthy and we're back from the World Cup. We'll see. But they're going to be rusty too.
That's a great point. I mean, in a weird way, for Arsenal to get through the stretch, especially if they can find a way to try to take max points before the World Cup, or at least close to it. Um,
Mhm.
you feel like Arsenal is only going to get better just with those two additions
And
back,
that might be why
back in the
Arteta's like
squad.
going with the same people too, because he's like, hey, this is really important, these games before the World Cup. And then we'll get a break. We'll get some more people back in the back half of the season. Hopefully we won't be as tired. But, before the World Cup, we got to go all out.
Because people might not either remember or might not realize how good Smith Rowe actually is.
Yeah.
The
Scored 10 goals last year.
ball sticks to his feet. He's creative. He's very good in tight areas, press resistant. He can basically he can get past a defender. So when you're going against a block, the thing you need to do is you need to beat people 1v1. Essentially, to create some
Yeah.
chaos, and that's something that he can offer. That someone like Odegaard, I feel like is more of a passer or a creator, where he needs
Yeah,
other people to
definitely.
make runs for him.
Yeah,
Um,
he's not going to be taking people on. Yeah.
One thing to maybe say is I did feel like you guys were unlucky with a couple ref decisions. It almost felt like Caseta's car was literally like grabbing Jesus. I don't know if it was in the box, but it was close. That went uncalled. There were a couple. I mean, the ref really allowed Southampton to be physical and basically knock you guys off
Mhm.
off the ball. I mean, it's not really an excuse, but maybe a couple fouls going your way. Maybe things would have been different. But that also made it when the ref was allowing so much physical contact to go uncalled, that allowed them basically, push you off the ball, and it allowed them
Mhm.
to be stronger defensively than maybe they could have been.
Yeah, but at least the ref was consistent, because Arsenal could be physical too and not get a foul. So at least the ref was consistent on both sides.
Mhm.
But yeah, maybe Arsenal need to adjust a little bit in that situation. Be like, hey, we can get away with being a little bit more physical. Because it did seem like Southampton were the more physical side as well. Arsenal was kind of taking it and not dishing it out. And with the ref being lenient, they could have dished it out too.
And I mean, briefly, do you have any thoughts on Southampton and
Mm,
how they played?
I'm impressed. Yeah, I mean, I'm impressed with how resilient they are. Because they got I mean, they started to creep back into the game in the first half, but things didn't really go their way. 11th minute, they're already down 1-0,
Hmm.
and their ability to just dominate the second half and find the equalizer. They're a resilient team, and we saw it the last couple of years. They lose games 7-0 or 9-0 even, and they don't get relegated still. And I think they won after they lost 9-0. I think the next game they won. So they're a resilient team under Hasenhüttl. They're able to bounce back from big setbacks and not get relegated. But I mean, we don't think that the height that this team can make it is not, it's like maybe mid-table.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I think they're okay with that. The last couple seasons they've been kind of worried about relegation. So if they could comfortably be mid-table, they'd be happy. But they're a tough team. I don't think they're going to get relegated. But I don't necessarily see a whole lot of upside in them. But I think that's okay. That's not bad. Maybe they can kind of build the squad a little bit. They just want to stay in the league.
I mean, I think that's a great point. It's the way that Hassan was able to get them to regroup because it wasn't a few that long ago where they looked really bad versus Man City. Where it
Yeah.
was before the Liverpool game. They made me think Man City were just like this like absolute giant. And the way they were able to bounce back from that because they were so bad. They tried pressing that day, and it just Man City were just a completely different level. And I was kind of wondering if maybe Arsenal was going to do the same, and it seemed they had a different plan. They sat back. They didn't actually press you, and they made Arsenal actually come to them, and they played it off the counter, and they did so really
Mhm.
well. In fact, but
Yeah.
it wasn't just off the counter. Like the goal they scored was really good. The way they were able to play through Arsenal.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a nice goal.
And one thing I did want to say is I am curious if like in this season the five subs really benefits Hassan's teams like maybe more than anyone else, other than like maybe the big squads with
Mhm.
the more depth, because again they are known for almost getting leggy in second halves of the season. So you always were when Southampton
True.
don't have a good start to the season because they
Yeah.
always seem to
It's
kind
just
of
gonna get
falter.
worse.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point.
and it's not enough to just say that they were sitting back and defending all game, but to do that you still need to run and you need to close down spaces. You need to time your challenges properly, and they were able to do that as well. So it was I thought it was pretty good resilient performance like you said, at least in that second half.
Yeah, completely switched the game around.
Mm. And then we'll move on to Manchester United and Chelsea. This one ends 1-1. Thankfully, I was praying for a draw, so these two
Me
teams
too.
didn't go that far away from Liverpool. I think the big
Mhm.
news going into the game was no Ronaldo in the squad,
Yeah.
and you know. Ten Hag actually did line up a little differently. He played almost a 4-1-4-1, kind of what we've seen Brendan Rodgers do, with Casemiro as the lone DM. Bruno and Eriksson had a little more of an advanced role, with Antony and Sancho on the wings, with Rashford leading the line, and then and Chelsea started with basically a back three, like a 3-4-2-1. We've seen like Tuchel play, but he didn't like that at all. I think one thing I definitely want to get out is immediately I think we've seen what missing Reece James is going to do to that squad. So
Yeah.
he went to a 4-3-3, brought on Kovacic for Cucurella, and it did feel like they had a little more control in the game. But yeah, the
He
goal,
did that in, like, the 35th minute too, didn't he?
yeah, he did it
It was
quickly.
like yeah. Ooh.
But
At least he
yes,
was, at least he made the change, was like, "I don't like this, I'm changing it, I don't care, what minute it is in the game."
yeah, I've got something in the notes to say about Andrew asked me like how the game was going, and I'll basically I'll save it. But yeah, the goal came from Jorginho with PK in like the 85th minute. McTominay is hugging Broja on a corner kick. It's pretty weak. I think Broja actually buys it by going down, but it's also something that we've seen a lot called lately. It seems like there's been some kind of directive to call it as much as you can. And so, yeah, it's soft, but I think it's fair. And then United were able to scrape one back at the very end with the Casemiro. Uh, it, Unfortunately, it looks like Pulisic had a chance to actually clear the danger entirely, and he's not able to do it. United are able to recycle possession, get the cross in, and Casemiro is able to win the header. It forces Kepa to dive backwards, and I don't know. I'll maybe appeal to the goalkeepers union here. I feel like Capo needs to do better on this, even though he does get a
Yeah.
big glove to it.
He got, like, a full hand to it, you can kinda tell too, he, like, looked around after he dove, I think he was kinda surprised that, he got so much of his hand on the ball and the ball still went in. You kinda see that look on his face, but I mean, you get so much on the ball, you gotta do better, I feel like, and, you can tell he was disappointed for sure.
And it's kind of negative because he was starting to really have a bit of a bounce back story. But it's like it's moments like this where you're reminded this is the reason why people didn't like you in the beginning. It's your dive radius has always been kind of off, and it unfortunately showed there.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as game notes, it did feel like Man United were dominating the first 30 minutes, almost pinning Chelsea in their own end, and I think that's the reason why made the switch to basically outnumber. What he did is he outnumbered Manchester United's midfield with 3v2, or in some cases 3v1, because Casemiro was all by himself. Bruno, when he plays in midfield, does not track back or do defensive duties, and
Not at all.
that exploits him a lot. But no, I was watching the game with Andrew and actually a neighbor friend, and who he doesn't watch a lot of soccer, and he asked me if how the game was going. Is it a good game? Andrew said meh, and I said it's been tactical with a bit of a wink. And so
Yeah.
the reason why I said like usually when announcers say that, I'm always like, oh no, it's gonna be a boring sluggish game. It's gonna be cagey, and
Just gonna cancel each other out. Yeah.
and this was actually it wasn't great on the eye, but at least we did get some entertainment late. But the way the managers did both make changes, because Ten Hag later in the second half took off Sancho, which was kind of a surprise, to bring on Fred. And
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it, it,
Weird.
it didn't necessarily help United going forward, but it give them a little bit back control in midfield. And so you saw a little chess match in between the game.
Mhm. Yeah, they can overrun in midfield, bring on Fred,
Mhm.
kind of stabilize the midfield. It worked. I mean, Casemiro's really good, but maybe can't hold down the defensive mid area all alone by himself, especially with some of those players like you mentioned that won't track back and help defend. So yeah, I mean, I like both the coaches being gutsy enough to make early decisions. And I mean, we talked about Ten Hag being very gutsy. We talked about him last week, just being like, hey, Maguire, you're the captain. You're not going to play. Ronaldo, you're not going to play.
Good call.
So he's not afraid to make early decisions. He's not afraid to, bench, good players that are kind of poisonous to the team. And it's worked. I hope he keeps doing it because it's paying off. I think so far.
Yeah, I mean the shots. United had 13 shots, only 2 on target. Chelsea had 6 shots and only 2 on target. I mean, just 4 shots on target apiece. Um, like I said, tactical or cagey, whatever word people want to use, it did feel like there was some missing quality at least in the final third. But
Mhm.
maybe to touch on to that, I feel like Rashford needs to finish some of these chances. In the way that I was kind of
Yeah.
focusing on Jesus, if you're going to lead the line and be a number 9, when you get in on goal, you need to put some of these away. I mean, he does
Mhm.
force a couple good saves by Kepa, but this is one of those. There's at least one a chance where I remember thinking Ronaldo probably does finish that, and
Ooh.
so that's a little takey, but I just kind of felt that. Another thing I wanted to say is I feel like Sancho does continue to be a negative on this team. Um,
Mm.
it's it's very weird how anytime he gets the ball, he has to switch it on to his stronger foot. He isn't. He's slowing the game down. He's not firing stuff in as quickly as he
Yeah.
maybe should, and he's also not taking people on. I think I saw something. He's only created like 4 or 5 chances through his entire time at United.
Really.
He's
Wow.
not being creative,
Yeah.
which is a problem. And yeah, it just seems
Mm.
that's at least like some of the offensive stuff. I mean, one thing to talk, Bruno is also kind of a wild card. It feels like the squad is almost imbalanced in a way because I don't really know how you play Bruno. It's possible that because of the way Ronaldo is kind of playing, that's maybe the reason why Bruno's been struggling, because we saw Bruno actually look pretty good versus Spurs in the midweek. But yeah, I mean that's just kind of that's opening up another can of worms. I mean,
Yeah.
quickly to focus to keep the focus on United. What did you think of the Ronaldo decision? And I mean, I can maybe see personally. I can see where Ten Hag's coming from. Obviously, when Ronaldo, walked off, you
Yeah.
almost have to make an example so other players don't do the same. So I understand that.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, Ten Hag hasn't been playing Ronaldo in a lot of these games, and I think the flip side. I'll just quickly say this, and then I'll see what you think. To be a possession side, your front player has to do defensive work. He has to work without the
Yeah.
ball, and
Mhm.
it's almost something that Ronaldo is not really used to. He's almost always played in counterattacking sides, and I think
Yeah.
that's kind of the reason why Ten Hag wants his forward to be a runner and not necessarily just a finisher. But
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I agree. And I mean, they've scored more goals with Ronaldo on the bench. So, and also,
that's a
I
fair point.
mean, he's kind of poisoned too. the team. I mean, our boy Alex kind of thinks that way too. So I think you kind of couple the fact with that he's, maybe not the best to play with attitude wise, and you couple that with the fact that they're scoring more goals without him,
Hmm.
because they haven't scored many goals in Europa when he plays, and he's been missing chances as well. So that it just kind of make everything, the decisions easier for Ten Hag. And they've been the right call. They've been the right decisions. And you can't, if you're Ronaldo, like he refused to come on as a sub. He refused to warm up.
Hmm.
I think he was mad because the game before, I think he scored a hat trick, so maybe he was expecting to start. But I mean, he can't refuse to warm up. This is the second time too. He left early in I think in a preseason game he left early. So Ten Hag was kind of like, you can't, two times. Maybe you get, a little leniency on the first time, but the second time it happens, you're done. You're out. And that's part of the poison that that Ronaldo might be bringing into the locker room. So I think they're just better without him, honestly. And they score more goals without him. So you don't have a good attitude, and we score more goals without you.
I
You're not
didn't
going.
realize that, but yeah, I mean, he's been making headlines about like not wanting to train. It's there's been this like cat and mouse thing with him, or there's been something brewing with him and Ten Hag, basically
Yeah, he's not
since right.
happy.
There's been a lot of talk about that. There's talk maybe they even wanted to sell him to start the season, or he wanted to leave. Um,
Yeah.
but I I don't want to necessarily focus too much time on Ronaldo. But one thing I'm wondering is would it change your mind if Ronaldo decided to act that way if United were losing? But he did this when
Hmm.
they were having this big win over Spurs, and it was supposed to be like a great moment. And instead,
Mhm.
all anyone wanted to talk about afterwards was him leaving and
Yeah.
abandoning his teammates.
What also kind of shows, that maybe he cares a little bit more about himself than the team because, like you said, they're winning 2-0. A lot of players be like, "Hey, I know I didn't play, but we won. I'm happy about that." But he's kind of more mad that he didn't play. So a little bit more of the poison, like he's individualistic and doesn't care about the team as much because he was pretty disappointed, even though they won 2-0. So
Yeah,
that just, it's more of why I think they need to move on from him. He's just not a good teammate.
I think so too. I mean, he can try to stay fit. I guess training. Maybe he can get game with reserves if he like wants to do that. But yeah,
Yes.
it feels like after Qatar, uh, he might move in January. It almost feels like
It'd be tough.
this is too hard to
Yeah.
repair.
Well, it seems like too that United really are willing to not take any money for him, but the problem is, he's going to demand. I think he's on like 500,000 a week at United, so there's not a lot of clubs that can afford that he wants to go to. I think like there's clubs in Saudi Arabia that kind of want him and could pay that, but he obviously doesn't want to go there. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, United's willing to basically take nothing and just get rid of him and get rid of those wages, but the wages are so big, not that many teams can really afford them.
Yeah, it's just the only two that really come to mind. Maybe Chelsea, even though you have Aubameyang, or honestly maybe Bayern.
Hmm.
Because they've stopped playing Mane at striker. They're having a bit of an issue there. The Mane's like left wing again, it seems, and sometimes they're playing Muller there. But again, I don't
That'd
know
be
if
interesting.
Bayern have an issue with wage structure as well. I remember
Yeah.
reading that they screwed up with Stane a couple years ago. But it's not just about Ronaldo. The star of the show was another Real Madrid player. And I mean, what did you think of Casemiro's performance?
Oh yeah, it was vintage. I love the goal too. It was kind of a scrappy goal. And it's contrasted to Ronaldo. Like you see how important, you know, tying the game and Casemiro scoring is to
Yeah,
Casemiro.
that
He's
was a great
like
reaction.
super excited. Yeah. And it's completely different than Ronaldo's. So I think yeah, he's got the right mentality. I mean, we didn't really question that. He's got the right mentality. He's going to do, I think, what the coach wants him to do. He's a little older. That's the only negative I can really think of his game right now. So it's already paying off, getting him. And we thought, maybe he's a little too old, but he would immediately bring, that championship mentality. And I think he has already. He was great, and I think he's just going to get more used to the team and get better from here.
Yeah, I mean, because you can think like you already have that Brazil midfield already, like him and Fred. possibly
Mhm.
in a pivot if you wanna do that. And another thing, I think it's just this is the player that it feels like they've missed or needed for like 3 or 4 years, and now they finally got him. And you mentioned
Yeah.
he is maybe a little up there, maybe 30. So you don't know because they did tie him to a long contract, so you don't know how later on down if that could
Yeah.
end up showing up. But at least for now, it's
For
already
now, it's good.
proven. Yeah, it's already helping out because you know,
Mhm.
Ten Hag has had a pretty good start to his United career or EPL career. And I think
Yeah.
Casemiro starting to feature a little bit more, I think, is helping some of these results, especially with Spurs and this one.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, he's heating up.
And then to focus a little bit on Chelsea, it's one of those where no, it's unlucky to concede that goal, but at the same time, I do feel it was pretty justified. Chelsea did have a little bit more control, but they just really weren't able to do anything with it. I
Yeah.
mentioned how you really saw what happened when you're missing Reece James. As Laqueta can't bomb forward and be that attacking wide threat that's required. And I think another problem too is with the center back depth the way it is. You know, you're missing Fofana. Koulibaly wasn't able to play this game. I think that's kind of becoming a problem too. They might have to stick to a
Yeah.
back four going forward. But
Yeah.
what were your thoughts on Chelsea?
Well, immediately I was kind of, I don't know, I kind of thought maybe you could switch Cucurella and Azpilicueta and play Azpilicueta as the third center back almost, which like Chelsea's done that before this year,
Hmm?
and Cucurella's pretty good in advanced roles. You know, we know he can, you know, he has a good shot, he can send good balls in. So that was kind of surprising. I thought maybe they could have done that, but I don't know. I mean, this game was kind of they kind of canceled each other out.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, could they Chelsea had more in the midfield too in the beginning, and Casemiro was doing a job in the center midfield. I don't know. It was just a lot of like inconsistencies, especially in the final third. Like they're not finding the right ball, or they're not doing like the best with their shots. I don't know, man. I want to see a little bit more Pulisic. Maybe I want to see Pulisic start. I know he had like some issues in this game, but and then Broja. I kind of like Broja off the bench. He's been playing better with you know, the more minutes he gets.
I would.
I
Yeah,
don't know. They have issues at striker, so I always think like maybe Broja can put some pressure on Aubameyang or you know Havertz or whoever's playing up there. So it's good to see Broja getting going.
yeah. I mean, if you go to a back four, maybe a 4-2-3-1, not even a 4-3-3. Like I know Potter likes having midfield control, but
Yeah,
it feels like that game they played when Pulisic scored. It might. I don't think it was Leeds. It was versus maybe Wolves versus Wolves. A
Wolves.
couple weeks ago. They did a 4-2-3-1 with basically Mount was like the 10, and Pulisic was next to him on the left wing. They had a pretty good connection together, and it feels
Yeah,
like if you played someone like Broja ahead, he would make runs that would open spaces for those two players to operate, which I think you're also
yeah,
missing too. And like another problem is like Sterling's getting the ball and he's not able to beat his men 1v1. It just feels like Potter has a lot of issues, both at the back, but also he needs to get these attackers going because it feels 6 shots and 2 on target. That it's not like United have been spectacular defensively, and so I feel like that was a warning sign to me.
yeah. And it kind of seems like Sterling's in a bit of a slump too. And they definitely need to get him going. That's for sure.
And the reason, pretty much the reason why Potter did change is Chelsea were not able to keep the ball, and United flew out of the gates in that first 20 minutes. It almost felt like this was going to be a hiding. Just Kepa was able to keep him in with a couple really good saves because
Yeah.
Rashford was through on goal at least a couple of times, maybe even three, in that first 20 minutes or so. United were able to win the ball back, and there was no one. Chelsea were outnumbered in midfield, and I think that's the reason why he made the switch. Um,
Mm.
I mean, the one maybe negative to all this is they may be lost for Varane. So we'll have to follow up on that. Our buddy
Yeah,
Alex,
I'm looking at it right now. It seems like he has a chance to make the World Cup,
that's
but
good. Yeah,
he won't play again for United until then. Let's see. He had an MRI on Sunday, and it looks like it's going to be 3 to 4 weeks out. So he won't play for Man U again before the World Cup, but he has a chance to make the World Cup at least because you know, we were all gutted like watching him react because we thought it was more about, you know, it's his last World Cup probably. So he, obviously thought that he was probably not going to make the World Cup, and we all kind of felt gutted for him. So it's good that at least it's not as bad as he thought, and he does have a chance to get healthy in time for the World Cup because it,
Yeah,
it will be his last one, and you can just tell how much it meant to him.
yeah.
It means a lot to these players too. So yeah, I'm glad the injury isn't as bad as people feared, but it looks like Man U's gonna have to do Lindelof or Maguire
Well,
for the rest of the games
that
until the break. So
that's
that's not going to be good.
that's what I want to get
Yeah,
out. Like our buddy Alex was crying along with him, and it was for that reason. He was like, "Oh no,
yeah.
this might mean more Maguire,"
I
and
guess
possible
Lindell. I do Lindelof.
because well
Yeah, do Lindell.
you have to do some of the squad rotation. At least Maguire will probably play in the Europa games at least. You imagine.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Maybe get him in some kind of form. I don't know.
but it's another example though of how close we are getting to the World Cup, where like any kind of naggle could do this to these players, and so that's another thing that just everyone has to go in, worrying about. To be honest, anytime you're going in for a
Yeah.
50-50 challenge, you're putting yourself into that. So it's possible going into these starting to go into these players' minds, where maybe that's also leading to some of the low scoring like you were talking about.
Hmm.
But we'll move on to Tottenham and Newcastle, and this was not a good week for Conte and Spurs. They do win 1-2. Uh, Newcastle in a 4-3. Probably the big change was Eddie Howe played Joe Linton almost further forward in one of the front three attackers, keeping Joe Willock. And this was I'll get into this. This was really cheeky because one, Joe Linton still showed really good defensive work rate, but two,
Hmm.
because you're playing Dan Burn, you don't really want him to go forward that much, but he's also able to almost shift into a back three, which allows Trippier to be a little more expansive going forward. And what that does is you have Willock and Joe Linton that are able to kind of overlap each other. And I think we saw Spurs really struggle with that. Both are very dynamic. Both are quick at it, taking players 1v1. I mean, the way Newcastle is built is they're built to press like crazy, and they're built to be direct and to be to frankly to get by players.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, it got started with Spurs actually having maybe the two best chances in the game. It looked like Son was through on goal both times. The first one was kind of just a speculative hit. He hit over the bar, but the second one he was actually through on goal. Bittencourt was able to get the ball off Longstaff. Harry Kane was able to dribble up all the way up the field. Got a good shot off, but Pope was able to stop it with a kick save. But that's not the one I wanted to talk about. Uh, Son also had a chance where he was through. He looked like he was through on Pope, but he was only able to chip him, and it was almost like a scuff chip, and it
Hmm.
wasn't hit hard enough where Trippier was able to clear it. So basically, three chances where Spurs maybe had a chance to take the lead, and they weren't able to. And unfortunately, the way Spurs are built, it almost feels like they can't really play from behind. And so
Yeah.
the first goal starts with Harry Wilson. It's a great ball over the top by Fabian Schär, and Wilson's able to just kind of he runs into Hugo Lloris almost in a manner like it's weird where like Lloris almost tries to buy the foul, but I feel like he has a chance to get this ball. It hits
Yeah.
his hip. It's another one where I feel like I'll appeal to the goalkeepers union here. I feel like he needs to do better here. Um,
Yeah, I mean, he should. It sounds kind of terrible, but he should just came out and wrecked him, like just destroyed him. And if he gets the ball, it's not a foul. I don't know. I just feel like as a goalkeeper, you kind of have to be aggressive, or else you're gonna get taken out if you don't take people out, like the legal way, at least. Get the ball. But yeah, he definitely could have done better. And Yoris is really good. Um, you would expect him to do better. He's France's goalkeeper, so yeah, he should have done better. I think he's a little disappointed with that for sure.
I mean, it's another thing where it's like it's similar to the Holland goal. But 'cause he was trying to buy the foul, and it wasn't giving it. It was a beautiful chip by Wilson, a good composure there. And then
Yeah, Callum Wilson's back. He's back, baby.
for me, the second goal is the problem for Spurs. This comes from just there's a little pressure on Lloris, and he freaks out and he has a bad pass to the sideline. I think he's trying to pick out Ryan Sessegnon, but Longstaff's able
Mm.
to get the ball first. He heads it to Almiron, and Sessegnon goes to ground and doesn't get Almiron. When you go to ground, I feel like you need to 100% certainty to get the ball or the player, because he doesn't do that. He puts Clements Longolet on ice essentially, and yeah, Almiron's able to just easily skate by him. It's again, it's another sign where like Spurs almost vulnerable a little bit at the back because we saw versus United, um, Ben Davies played there instead, and he looked kind of vulnerable in 1v1 situations as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, he's able to get by, and then he's able to, Almiron's able to finish from a tight angle. Once again, getting it under Luis. I still feel like Luis should do better in this one as well. Again, that maybe feels harsh, but anyways,
Yeah, keeper his quality probably should have done better, honestly.
probably. I mean, is this? I don't want to say the handball that wasn't called. Well, maybe Bournemouth we could feel harsh by. It did feel
Mm,
like Emerson Royal was caught with his hand tie when Joelinton headed it. It's close by, it hits his hand, but yeah, it feels like there's no consistency. So it's good to get that out, and then Harry Kane was able to get Spurs at least somewhat in the game with a header off a corner kick, but. I think the main thing to say is Spurs did have 17 shots, 5 on target, to Newcastle's 13 with 5. But a lot of these shots, I think 13 of them were in the first half. So when Spurs were down a goal and they had to chase the game, they were only able to get basically 4 looks on goal, or four shots in
mm.
total. I think only 2 on goal, which
Oof.
I think that's worrying to me.
Yeah, and the way they're set up too, like, they have five in the midfield basically. Emerson and Sessegnon were wingbacks, but four of the five got yellow cards, so that kind of limited their ability to put in a tackle if you're worried about getting the red. But also, they're all defensive. I mean, Emerson and Sessegnon are fullbacks basically. Then you have Skip, Basum, and Betancourt.
Hmm.
They're all defensive mids. So basically, I mean, they do have injuries like Richarlison and Kulusevski are out, so that limits them. But you're
Big time.
basically just relying on Kane and Son to score goals.
Yep.
And well, the positive would be Kane could possibly hold the ball up, and you could get those midfielders coming in from deep if he can hold the ball up. But yeah, it's tough with some of those players, attacking players that they have out. They only have Kane and Son, so you can kind of as a defense key in on those two, and I think you'll be in good shape for the game. I mean, they might score a goal, but yeah, you'd be in good shape, I think.
And we saw that in the first half. They were able to create a little bit by doing that, by Kane dropping deep and finding Son through the middle. Son wasn't able to just finish that, but it's so reliant on Kane and Son basically being your two creators. They definitely
Yeah.
are missing Kulusevski and Richarlison. I also think the drop off when Perisic can't play is huge.
Mm,
And so it's just it
yeah.
it does feel like Spurs maybe messed up on not bringing in someone like a Madison or Eriksson in the offseason to
Mhm.
have a second guy to be a creator, to allow Kane to play a little higher upfield. I mean, we've talked about that a little bit in the past as well. But yeah, they're really going to miss Richarlison, I think. And I don't know when Kulishevsky's going to be back. He I think Sweden's in the World Cup, so that would be, or maybe they're not. Um, but it feels he might be won't be seen until
True.
December.
I want a little bit more Jed Spence too. He hasn't played much at all, and he was really good last year for Nottingham.
That's a
So
good shout.
I,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to see more Spence. But I guess there's something there like that Conte sees day in and day out where he just doesn't trust Spence in the lineup. I guess, but yeah, I'd like to see him a little bit more, especially with like you said, with Kulusevski out and with Richarlison out too. Let's see what he has. He's barely played any.
I mean, it's if nothing else, Conte needs to play Lucas more and more. It feels
Yeah,
like
more.
when he does finally get on the field, he can offer some kind of spark. I mean, they weren't able to really do a whole lot in this game, but at least in the past, it seems he's been able to offer something. But
Yeah.
yeah, it just that second half was worrying. At least if I was a Spurs fan, I talked about them last week as maybe because they were even basically with Arsenal or even with Man City in points. Maybe Conte could put something together when they're able to get leads. But unfortunately, if you don't get the lead, if you don't get that first goal, and you have to go chase a game, all of Conte's the way he likes to play backfires, and it doesn't seem they have a plan B.
Did you see who the backup goalkeeper on the bench was for Newcastle, by the way?
Santiago, wait, who is it?
Carius is back.
Oh, whoa. Oh, I was not expecting
Yeah,
that. Okay.
I didn't know. I just looked at the bench and saw and was like, "What?" Because didn't they have Well, they had Freddie Woodman, but he's out. He's loaned out. But they have
They had Dubravka or
Dubravka, yeah.
yeah.
But Dubravka's is Dubravka at United now? I think he was at
Uh,
United, didn't he?
that I don't know.
Huh. I'm not. But yeah, Carey is back in the Premier League. I think
Curious
he's
back.
coming from Turkey, so he's coming from Besiktas.
I mean, to focus on the team that won. What do you think of Newcastle? Because we've talked about them like the last couple of weeks. How quietly Newcastle's fifth, quietly Newcastle's sixth. Now, not quietly, Newcastle are in the top four already.
Yeah,
Yeah,
crazy.
what do you think of them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really impressed with them. Obviously, they have the financial backing, but they've kind of like been able to play on and win with some players injured. Callum Wilson was hurt in the beginning of the year.
Hmm.
Saint Maximin's out now too. And like last year, Saint Maximin and Wilson were both hurt, and they kind of struggled at times. But now it seems like they have Almiron hitting. Almiron has 6 goals already in the Premier League, so he's on fire. He's starting to pick up the pace for goals. Gamares is a really good playmaker for them, and we've talked about how they might not necessarily have gone out and bought stars, where they kind of went out and bought players that more fit the Newcastle style of play. But I mean, if they finish in the top four, I think then you will see them go out and get stars because
I think
stars
so
will
too.
they'll go to Newcastle because Newcastle can pay their wages, and then they're in the Champions League too. I mean, they've just opened up a whole new level of player for Newcastle if they got in the Champions League. Which I'm kind of conflicted because I'm liking Newcastle being up in the table,
It's
but at the
something
same
new,
time,
but yeah,
yeah, it's something new, and like we kind of like Newcastle because they haven't been great recently, and they're kind of like a EPL staple in there. But you also don't necessarily like all that oil money, and then they can
it
possibly just buy
feels
all the players they want to, like City.
feels a deal with the devil in some respects. Um, I mean, the one thing you look at is like other than Bruno, it feels like they do lack a good passer in midfield. But even with that said,
Yeah,
it does look like Jonjo Shelvey is returning. And I remember
yeah, yeah,
before he got injured last year, Bruno Guimaraes was their number eight. When they played Arsenal, Shelvey was basically their deep lying. They played him almost like when Real Madrid plays Modric or Cruz at the
mm,
CDM. Plays him deeper and basically controls things from further behind. But it feels like Grimerish can maybe even be played more advanced than the way he's doing.
yeah,
Another thing when you watch them is they've got a lot of positional green lights where they're able to just move wherever they want as long as someone else is able to cover for them.
mm,
It's that goes down to Eddie Howe's coaching, I think. And
yeah,
another thing to
yeah. Eddie
say
has been great.
is when Eddie Howe took over, one thing I was thinking of is okay, Newcastle are going to be better on the eye because at Bournemouth, his teams were a little bit more attacking and they had some flair, which was new. For a side like Bournemouth, like usually those bottom sides weren't nearly as expansive like that. But one thing he was known for also was being very vulnerable at the back, shipping a lot of
Yeah,
goals. And for him to
definitely.
just turn around and basically, they have the best record in the. We said that last week, in the league. Given up 10 now, maybe they're tied. Uh, that is such a reversal from how he's been in the past. So another thing to credit Hal on.
Yeah. Oh, they're still best in goals allowed. Arsenal and City have given up 11, so and Newcastle only 10. And Newcastle scored 20 goals too. I mean they've scored more than Chelsea. They've got a better goal differential than Chelsea, Man United, Liverpool. So yeah, they're definitely I guess they're starting to kind of move up into the table where we thought they would be. We just maybe thought it would be next year or maybe even like the year after. We didn't think top four would be this quick necessarily. Maybe like Europa League sixth kind of thing, but man, fourth place and seemingly maybe even higher. 4 wins and a draw their last five.
And another thing too, because I do want to get this out there. Yes, they haven't gone out and bought stars, but their net spend, I think I calculated, is basically 270 million for the
Yeah,
calendar
they're
year.
still spending.
It dwarfs what anyone else has, I think, in all of Europe. And it
Yeah.
feels like there anything. If the reports are right, they're going to be able to spend again in January. And so
Mm.
it's fun to talk them up now, but they are going to pass a lot of clubs that maybe they aren't expecting to,
Yeah.
by just being able to just spend more than anyone else. And whether you buy
Mm.
stars or not, you're buying quality. And it feels like another
Yeah.
problem too is they haven't really missed on their buys so far. Like the one maybe question mark is Chris Wood, but it feels like that was a
Yeah.
tactical buy. That was like done to hurt
At the
Burnley
time they
more.
need.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, and then, like, Trippier has been amazing. He's just
spectacular.
one of them. Gamara's, yeah, we talked about. Botman should be really good. So,
Botman
and
hasn't
Pope
lost a.
at
I don't think
goalkeeper.
Botman's lost a game for them
Yeah.
since he's been
Oh,
starting for
yeah,
them.
you're probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he had a little bit of an injury, but yeah, I mean, it's they're just going to be able to buy even better quality players though if they get top four, which is that's a scary thing for us
Yep.
because they'll
Yep.
be. I mean, they could be the new City in a couple of years because but City before the oil money, they were ho hum. They weren't anything to write home about, and then the oil money comes in, and boom, they're dominating.
Well, they were also. I can't remember if they bought Rubinho with their oil money after the takeover or not, but it
That
felt
was
like
before, wasn't it?
City bought a bunch of like ishy stars. Was it
Yeah,
did they have was it Michael Richards? Not Michael Richards.
Michael Richards. Yeah, they
Was
had
it
Michael Richards.
Balotelli? Was he bought with the
Balotelli.
he bought
Oh,
with the
Balotelli
oil money?
was oil money, I think.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I
it's
think so.
like
But I don't think I think Rubinho was right before
they
that.
haven't necessarily done that. Silva would definitely be. Silva
Yeah,
was probably
Silva,
one. Aguero. So
Aguero. Yeah,
I mean, City didn't necessarily purchase purchase poorly because within like 2 years, I think they were winning the league. Um,
yeah,
but we'll move on to Liverpool and Nottingham Forest, and one of the reasons why I'm harping on Newcastle is I think Newcastle are about to replace Liverpool in that top four or top six, whatever you wanna say, because they're going in the absolute opposite direction. Um, th- 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 they lose 1-0 to Forest. That itself is what it is. But I think the worrying to me is Klopp played a 4-2-2-2 formation essentially, and what that means is it's a box, but you did that because you don't have anyone to offer width anymore. And the negative to that also was, due to other injuries at the back, Trent's on a minutes restriction. He played James Milner at right back again, and this really showed up because Harvey Elliott and Cavallo are basically I call them half space players, but basically they don't they don't play on the touchline, and they don't have the speed to take people on 1v1 or to get by someone and then get a cross off. So
yeah.
one thing that Liverpool did is they shrunk the field essentially for what Nottingham Forest had to defend. I think that really showed up. Not having Darwin Nunes was a big negative as well, and definitely not having Thiago. Thiago had an ear
Yeah.
infection, and again, it's just how do they go from looking like they did versus City to this, not having Thiago? It's just
He had, he had an ear infection.
yeah.
Hmm. I don't know about you, but I think I would have played through an ear infection. I mean, we probably have. I mean,
No.
you know, club.
For people live out. Will be responsible. Don't mess with ear infections because I think they can lead to
Oh,
strokes.
right. Well, yeah, and I guess maybe if the ball hit his ear, it could burst his eardrum or something. But yeah, I mean, they're different without him. They're a different team without him. They need him. They need him healthy. Gosh, is he better now? Like,
You go from looking no, it's looking like he's not. He didn't train today, so he might miss the Ajax game. But
really?
you go from looking like you did versus City to one thing I treated is if you took out Salah, Virgil van Dijk, probably Andy Robinson, and Allison, this squad would struggle to stay up in the league.
Yeah,
I think the
yeah.
bench depth is that bad. I mean, the goal comes from Tara O'Reilly. It just comes from a free kick. Joe Gomez just loses the ball. Aroni's clever in that respect. He's able to draw the foul. It's a free kick, and then Forrest do almost like a playground kind of move where Cook leaves Fabinho and basically runs behind the last guy, almost like a pick play. And Liverpool don't pick him
Mhm.
up, so Cook is able to get the ball. He's able to time his run, and get the ball completely with no one around him. He has a good cross in, and first I forget who's first on the ball, but the shot basically hits off the post. Liverpool aren't able to clear it. It goes to Awoni, and it's a good finish. But
Mhm.
after that, it was just Liverpool just couldn't really do anything. They had two shots on target in the first half. They struggled to move the ball. They weren't able to, when Curtis Jones got the ball, literally the play would stop. It was just very stagnant. The ball has to move quickly to beat a block. And there were like no switches of play. Played solid centrally. I liked it versus City. But the one negative here is it was hard to get him the ball. I mean, Forest were sitting in a block, and they were closing off passing lanes and making it really, really tough. So
Mm. I mean, I tell you what, too. Liverpool, they had 76% possession. They had almost 450 passes, more passes than Nottingham Forest. And for all that like ball dominance, they both had 7 shots on target.
and that's the main
So
thing. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, unfortunately, Liverpool had 5 more shots. So I mean, really, that's not that many more shots considering how much more of the ball they had. Like it's crazy. And I mean, you mentioned it, like I think Van Dijk had like 2 chances at the end there. Henderson made a string of good saves too to get the result.
Yep. Hmm.
So maybe, yeah, I mean, depth definitely, and a little bit unluckiness. And this was kind of a banana skin game coming off the high of beating City and shutting City out. So this was always, I think, going to be a tough game. Like we know that it's the Premier League and anyone can beat anyone. Um,
Yeah,
and I think that it showed again today,
they
or
played they
the
played
weekend.
late on Wednesday, and it was the early game on Saturday away as well. So I mean,
Yeah.
they had to go in thinking it was going to be rough, especially it showed up also versus West Ham, but missing Luis Diaz and missing Diego Chota, just you're missing guys that are able to take people on 1v1 and able to stretch the field out a little bit more. You need to stretch. It's harder to defend if the pitch is bigger. And
Yeah.
that's when you're able to play on the touchline. That's what that offers, and just it was actually relatively easy for Nottingham Forest to defend. You mentioned the Van Dijk chances. This is one thing where I'm thinking not having Darwin Núñez was huge. I think Darwin Núñez probably
Mm,
would have put some of these away. Van Dijk just it was one of those days where just nothing really worked for him. And
yeah.
a couple of them, I feel like he could have just done better. One, he actually tried to square to Firmino instead of taking it on. Yeah, he did force a couple good saves from Henderson. But you mentioned the 7 shots. Nottingham Forest had 7 shots on target, forced Allison to work 7 times. Allison is called on to make 35 saves this season. It's fifth most in the league, only behind Bird Leno, Jordan Pickford, David Raya, and Dane Henderson. And you look at where those teams are in
Mm,
the table. So to me, that
yeah.
shows how much easier it's been than in the past for teams to get past the midfield and to basically get behind Liverpool's back line than in past seasons.
Mm,
Just that statistic alone, it's a different Liverpool than you're seeing. And one of the reasons that is Fabinho in the last couple of games has really highlighted almost his decline in a negative way. And maybe one of the reasons why Klopp actually did move formations to switch to like a double pivot in midfield is I don't think he has a DM that can play that role by himself anymore.
no, yeah, it would have to be him. It would have to be like Thiago and Fabinho is like the best pair you could probably do deep in the center of the pitch, right?
And I think they tried. Was Thiago rested versus West Ham? I think they tried Fabinho and Henderson versus West Ham, and that didn't necessarily look that great either. Though Henderson actually had a pretty good game that day. No. They tried Thiago and Henderson, and then Fabinho came on in the second half. That's right. But Fabinho did not look
Mm,
good versus West Ham. In fact, Declan Rice just completely bulldozed over him a little bit. It just his legs just feel gone, and so
mm,
it's possible some of that decline is not having Thiago by his side. But another thing could be not having Matip or Konate with him to kind of be an extra body to win some of those duels in midfield that he's had in the past. Joe Gomez is not that kind of a defender, and that's another thing to get on too. Joe Gomez was very very poor in this game, and it's it's
mm.
it's a shame because he did such a good job versus Holland and City. But
Yeah.
it's not just the foul that he gave up. He was poor on the ball, poor passing it, just giving the ball away. And another thing too is it felt like when Forest were able to actually win the ball back and start an attack, Joe Gomez was running backwards. He was not engaging. He was playing off, and it was actually relatively easy for Forrest to get behind him and again to get looks on Allison. I
Mm,
mean, this game could have been really bad. Allison made a number of really good saves, so I,
yeah.
I think the Kanate and Matip injuries are really showing up. And another thing too is it's a shame for that because you can't play Gomez at right back like I want to see. I want to see that. I
Mhm,
feel like one of the reasons why they kind of they look a little off at least, or they look so narrow, is you're not able to get that width from the fullback like you usually can on that right side. I think Harvey Elliott would greatly benefit from something like that. And it's just
Yeah, because
yeah,
Milner's not going to do it for sure.
no, and Gomez looked pretty good versus Rangers a couple days back, and so yeah, again, another thing too is you can't experiment with Trent in midfield because of that. So, and Calvin Ramsey is getting close to training. So I'm curious if again we keep mentioning that if that is in the cards. But yeah, it's looking quite dire because this was a chance where you thought you looked at the fixture list after Man City. It's Forest coming as Southampton somewhere in between, and I think it's Leeds. And you look at that
Mm.
before the World Cup, and you looked at maybe this was a chance to stay within four or 5 points before the World Cup. Maybe you get
Yeah.
Diaz back after in December, and there it looks like they've blown that opportunity. Maybe.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting them to just build on the Man City result because, like you said, like it was a perfect opportunity for them to put a string of wins together, and that's kind of they've been like just struggling for that consistency because we saw them score, how many did they score? Like 9 goals against Bournemouth, in late August or early September, and then they beat City, so like we know they have goals, and then we know they can like beat top teams. It's just they're just so inconsistent, and that's probably the injuries, honestly. But I just really want them to build on that City result, and kind of, I felt like if they could, you know, beat Forest and then start to get a roll going before the World Cup, they could possibly be in the top four again. I think it's a team that's talented enough to be in the top four. They just have those injury problems, and it contributes to the inconsistencies that they have, between different games. I mean, it was perfectly encapsulated with them beating City and then losing to Forest and not being able to score. And, it kind of shows that they're kind of a bit of a like roller coaster team right now. They need to settle down, and this was like the perfect chance for them to get a streak of results going before the break.
I mean, it's the lowest touches that Salah's ever had. I think at least I can't
Ooh,
remember. He had 21 touches. He was played on the
dang.
wing again versus West Ham, so he had 48 touches, and then he had 32 versus Man City. And so it
Wow.
was hard to even get Salah involved, which was a negative as well. I mean, you touched on the Bournemouth game. I'm curious if that's maybe the worst result in Klopp's era, because this is speculation. I think that convinced the board and everyone else they were good. They didn't need to go out
Mm,
and spend because hey, we're 1-9-0. Everything is good again, and they just didn't see how vulnerable they were to any kind of injury issues. I mean,
mhm.
not having Tiago, this is an ear infection, but he already missed because of a hamstring. That was probably easy to predict before the season started. I think it did predict
Yeah.
that, and then because the backup to Tiago is also a player that's had fitness issues in Naby Keita. I mean, Naby Keita would solve a lot of this as well. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, it's rough. It's what you ask for when you don't invest in the squad. You keep thinking that Klopp can
Yeah.
can can turn 19-year-old kids into something that they aren't. I mean, Harvey Elliott and Fabio Carvalho, Curtis Jones could end up having promising careers, but at the moment, Liverpool almost have to play them, and at the moment, I don't think they would get into any top eight, top 10 squad starting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd agree there for sure.
And so that's pretty much it for Liverpool. I mean, do you have any thoughts on Forest, what they were able to do?
It was nice to see Forrest win. I mean, we've talked about how they just have bought like basically a whole new, not only a whole new 11, but they basically bought like a whole new, you know, 20 21 players. They bought two whole new teams basically.
Hmm.
So maybe you're starting to see them kind of like settle down and play together a little bit more. I'm thinking maybe like it'll pick up more. The results will pick up and the play will pick up when they get more used to playing with each other. But it's still like not a consistent lineup. It's like
Hmm.
very, I don't know who's going to play. I don't know where people are going to play. I think that's kind of like slowing them down a little bit. But it was a great result. They needed to, because like the relegation zone is pretty tight. The bottom three teams have 9 points, and they're only like 2 points away from getting out of the relegation zone.
I
So it
think
was a
it's
huge win
I think it's
because
five
if they
points
lost,
from
oh,
from
it's a five.
it's five. Well, it's 5 points from where the bottom is. I think because they have nine. I think it's 5 points to maybe even top 10 where Brentford are.
Brentford, yeah, West Ham's 10 at 14. So yeah, 5 points. Wow. It's really compact down
It
there.
really is.
Wow.
Um,
So yeah, so it's a big 3 points because if they lost and they're sitting at 6 points, they're three out looking up. And it's a win and a draw,
yeah,
back to back. So starting to
they had
put
a good week. Yeah.
yeah, starting to put some things together. And I was getting worried because they just signed like Cooper to a long-term contract too. And I was kind of wondering, hey, is Cooper the guy?
I
But
actually,
I think he is probably.
I think that's good. Yeah, because at least you don't want to have any of that cloud hanging over. So at least the
Hmm.
players that have come in, they know they can buy in. And they know that, hey, this is the guy that they're going to stick with, because this is going to take some time. And I think one thing you've seen is you've seen a change in shape. They went to a 4-3-3, almost like a 4-5-1, without the ball. And they've kind of changed from how they were to how they were to being way more compact, and defending. And what you've seen is you've seen a couple clean sheets. This was one of the worst defenses in the league a couple weeks back, and so two clean sheets in a row, that helps. And they were quite good in midfield with that three that they played with Fruela. Um, I can't.
Yates
Yeah, yeah, Yates. Actually, Yates got the better of Firmino.
and
Um,
Kuyate.
that's right.
Kuyate from Palace too. I think he's a pretty good player as well.
And it's just kind of bittersweet that a couple former Reds were able to to kind of put the dagger in. Nico Williams was
Mhm.
schooling James Milner, in 1v1s as well. So, and Tyree Iwani, he actually thanked Liverpool, which is kind of cool. Former, I guess, Liverpool academy kid. Yeah, he
Mhm.
thanked them for scouting him, and so that was a nice way for him to to pay back the club that scouted you. But
Yeah,
no, that was a good moment for him, and probably a big moment for him, because he hasn't always been starting,
yeah,
for them. Started over Dennis, and
yeah,
maybe deserved earned his spot to get more playing time.
yeah. He had a really good year at Union Berlin last year too. So he's a good player. And Steve Cooper, former Liverpool youth coach. I didn't know that, Ben. Put
Yeah,
that in the
yeah,
notes. That's a good
the under
tidbit there.
18s. Yep. Hmm.
Cool. I didn't know that.
And so there you go. Just all coming full circle. And Anyways, we'll move on to Leeds and Fulham. I call this the USMT training camp game in England game.
In England.
With a bunch of the only negative was no Tyler Adams, suffered
Yeah.
a late knock versus Leicester. But Marsh thinks it's only a day-to-day thing, so maybe we'll see him next game. So that's good news. Um,
Mhm.
Leeds do lose 2-3 with and let's see, the goals got started. Well, actually, really, the first warning came early on. Um, Basically, Antoine Robinson gets down on the left wing and has a really hopeful cross into the box to find Harrison Reed, who has a really nice touch. He's able to. I mean, Harrison Reed is unmarked in the first place because Pascal Struck isn't doing his job, and then
Mhm.
he's able to get a good shot off and forces. He gets it past Melia, and then Roke is able to clear it off. But you saw just in that moment, Pascal Struck is not doing his job. He should not be this right back, 'cause this could maybe be a problem, and it was. But the real issue here is Leeds get the first goal. It's Harrison Reed loses the ball. Leeds advance it forward with Rucka. He finds Sinisteris. Sinisteris finds Aronson, and Aronson plays Jack Harrison through on goal. Uh, his shot's only blocked, but then the ball falls to Rodriguez's head. Um, it's a pretty good sequence. And you thought, well, maybe this is a way for Leeds to kind of turn things around. And all that good work was erased because they couldn't mark anyone on a corner kick.
Yeah.
It starts with Mitrovic. It's a pretty nice run by Harry Wilson. He just runs towards the ball, and it's almost like a dummy run because that draws one of the Leeds defenders to follow Wilson. And what that does is that opens up the space for Mitrovic to basically have a 1v1 with Luke Ayling, and Ayling he has no shot. Um, and So it was 2-1 at half, or it was 1-1 at halftime, and then it felt like Leeds actually were the better team. Uh, but Fulham just were able to, like you said, able to stay in there, and then they got the second by once again Leeds being able to not defend a corner kick. They
Mhm.
did a good enough job to head the first ball away, but Fulham were able to keep possession, recycle it a little bit. Uh, they were able to get William the ball, and William finds Pereira, who's completely free to cross the ball, and just absolutely no one is marking Bobby Reed. It's again, once again, Pascal Struck. I do not understand what he's doing. He's marking no one and not paying attention to where Bobby Reed is. Bobby Reed doesn't even move in this sequence. So it's another error there, and then they were able to get the all important third with William. And this time it wasn't a corner kick, so improvement. This was off a throw-in. They weren't
Okay.
able to handle it. And Mitrovic does a really clever backheel pass to Harrison Reed, who nutmegs Robin Koch, and then squares it to William, who again is unmarked because Luke Aylen leaves William to go to Harrison Reed, and then Harrison Reed is able to easy pass to William, and then Leaves were able to get one back like in the 90th minute by Somerville. It's a nice play by Gerhardt and Bamford, but that's really it. I mean, the stats were pretty even. The XG says it should have been a tied game, but we'll get. I think we'll probably focus a little bit more on Leeds than Fulham. When you can't defend at a schoolboy level, this is going to show up, and I don't really know what Marsh can do to fix this.
Yeah, there's no real options on the bench, and I mean, their back four is definitely not the best. But yeah, I mean, I have issues with both fullbacks, Stroik, like you talked about, and Luke Ayling as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're usually a little better. Maybe not having Adams in there kind of put more pressure on them. But Ayling was kind of in trouble on the third goal for Fulham. He kind of got called out,
He did. Mm-hmm.
and no one like covered for him. So yeah, but there's no option really for Marsh to do at defense. There's like really no one else. And I mean, I feel bad because Leeds and Marsh, they haven't really gotten the results, but they're still not playing bad. Like I still feel like you know I don't know, maybe they're just a little bit, more class in and around the box, maybe a little bit more better finishing, and some of these losses are maybe draws, and maybe they're doing a little better. Because I do think like they're pretty fun to watch attacking wise.
Mm-hmm.
They have Aronson, Rodrigo, Sinistera, players like that, and then they do usually have the defensive mid to kind of cover for them, but the defense is not good. We kind of have questions about Messier too. Like some days he's really good, other days he's kind of poor. I don't know. I'm just I wanted Marsh to do well, and he might be under pressure a little bit now. They
I think
just
he's
the
in
results
trouble.
haven't gone their way.
It's
You
it's.
think he's in trouble?
I think he's lost 6 of 8. Um,
He's
going all the way back. I can't remember the last. I don't think his last win was Chelsea, but it might be. Um,
ooh, he
I
lost
mean,
4 in a row.
it's what's a shame is like we praise the recruiting because they have done a good job at least scouting the attacking players that they brought in. They lost Calvin Phillips, so they needed to bring a DM. They brought in Roca and Tyler Adams. That seems to have done pretty well, but it's so weird how they had almost a historically bad defense last year, and
Yeah.
that's the reason why they almost got hooked. They were only able to stay up on the last day, and it's just weird. They didn't try to fix any of that. They didn't look at trying to replace any fullbacks or the center backs. And
Yeah.
so
Good call.
uh,
I mean, they're so close to like more points though. Like I'm looking at the season so far, and like they tied Southampton 2-2. That could have been a win. They lost to Brighton 1-0. They tied Everton 1-1. They tied Villa 1-1 with a red card. They only lost to Palace by a point. I mean, a goal. They lost to Arsenal 1-0. So they're hanging around a lot of games, and they're close. But it doesn't matter if they can't get points, and where they are on the table, they need points. It doesn't really matter if they're playing teams well. They're still dropping points, and they're still in the relegation zone.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is if this is one of those cases where someone like Stuart Dallas, who they've had in the past, he would have. I think he's not really a fullback by trade, but he was like one of those utility players.
Yeah.
He would have been able to do a job for them, and I think they're missing. I think they're missing that. But
Mhm.
another thing that we're focusing a little bit on the back end and defense. I mean, you have to be able to defend corner kicks and throw-ins to stay
Yeah.
up at this level. But another thing too is Patrick Bamford is getting in so many good areas almost every game now, and he's not putting them away. And I fear that if Marsh does get hooked, it's going to be because Bamford's not able to finish a lot of these chances. That
Yeah.
Brendan Aronson is putting on a plate in some of these for him.
Yeah, he's been playing well at least. That's the one positive we got. And Adams, when healthy, he does a good job. He runs a ton. So the two American players are doing their part, and then Marsh just doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of options at times. I think Bamford. I mean, I hope Bamford will start scoring. I think maybe just this long timeout with the injury, he's kind of rusty,
Mhm.
and eventually maybe he'll find a shooting for him because that's kind like the shooting. I guess is like the last thing to come back when you're back playing because it's the hardest thing to do.
He had a really good,
So
yeah. I'm sorry.
maybe he bags one though, and then he gets into some kind of maybe just needs one goal to kind of get that confidence up. So that's always the hope, I guess, if you're a Leeds fan. If he can get a goal, maybe he gets confident, and maybe he can bag like 20 goals again, like he did a couple years ago.
He had a really good link up for their second goal with Gerhardt, and I think maybe if not Bamford, I think Marsh needs to lean on this youngster Gerhardt. He seems when he comes on, he seems
He's a
to,
good
to
player.
provide a fairly good spark, and so maybe that would replace Jack Harrison. But it just feels it feels they need to find a way to get Gerhardt on the field a little bit more because if nothing else, he creates chances a little way. He's a bit of a bowling ball. Um,
Yeah,
and yeah, I mean, other than that, it is kind of worrying because, like you said, it feels like their performances aren't reflecting their results, and that's a positive in one way, but at the same time, that's also a negative because when you're performing well and still not getting results, I don't know when you have to look at the manager because there's nothing else you can really do. You have to blame it on
yeah.
someone. Um,
And if you're gonna, and then when you don't perform well, you're definitely gonna lose because you were losing when you were playing well.
mhm, yeah, so it's fortunately not great. I mean, another thing I was thinking of too is I remember in the summertime, I think Chris Richards was linked to the Leeds because of Marsh, and Marsh had already targeted two Americans. It's a shame that
Mhm.
didn't happen because Chris Richards isn't playing with Palace. He would have found a way to fit in the squad.
Yeah, you would think so. He would have been, yeah, probably the best center back on the team if he went there for sure.
We'd be having another
Playing.
another American actually playing. I mean, because one thing to touch
Yeah,
on
we
Fulham
need a center back too. Ugh.
is Fulham's got two Americans playing every single week. It seems. In fact, Tim Ream's now their captain.
Yeah,
So that's pretty cool. And speaking of
yeah, they've
Fulham,
been playing well together.
a really great week for them to get 6 points on the back of clobbering Villa and then this game. So
Hmm. Yeah, Mitrovic in the goals again too. Looks like he, I guess, is the close. Well, is he? Who's close? Who's the closest challenger to Holland? Because it's Mitrovic and who else? There's someone else that scored a decent amount, but
oh wow, I should know this. Crap.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I
Probably
can't.
Mitrovic will be. Mitrovic will probably. I mean, he's not going to win the Golden Boot, but he might be the closest challenger to Holland at this point.
Oh my gosh, I should not be stumped by that.
I'm googling
It's
it.
not it's not like Phil. I don't think it's anyone on Liverpool. Um, is it? No, it's not. Jesus has like
Oh,
five.
oh, it's Harry Kane.
Oh, duh,
Duh.
duh, duh, duh. That's
All right,
bad.
let's see.
That's bad by
Yeah, it's
us.
Kane.
It's bad
Kane
by
at
us.
10. Mitrovic is at 9,
Hmm.
and then Holland's at 17. Tony's at 8 too. So yeah, maybe Mitrovic and Kane can kind of make it a decent Golden Boot race, but you know,
Well,
but Mitrovic doing great.
well, you brought up Mitrovic, and I feel like when people do talk about Fulham, Mitrovic is obviously the example. Maybe the two Americans will get headlines, but I think Harrison Reed deserves to have
Yeah,
a shout out because
totally.
I feel like he's not really known for his offensive output. He's starting to score some goals from him. I think he
Yeah,
also scored versus Villa, and he's starting to create some assists. So he maybe becoming an overall midfielder, not just a defensive holding type midfielder. Um,
yeah, he's underrated for sure.
I mean, he won pretty good work rate too, winning 9 of his 11 duels, and three successful tackles. We talked about Paulinho a couple weeks ago. Him and Reed are a pretty good duo in that midfield.
Yeah, yeah, I think so for sure.
And so, I mean, quite a good. I was a little worried a little bit for their manager, but it seems at least right now they're in quite a form because I think they're what are they, eighth or seventh?
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
they're, they're nowhere near relegation.
yeah. Where are they? Yeah, Jeremy's actually kind of worried. But they're in 7th. Wow. So yeah, they're playing really well.
I think
22 goals scored too. It's a decent amount.
I think Jeremy's right to get worried, and we're going to maybe talk a little bit why. Um,
Mm,
we'll move on to Aston Villa and Brentford. This one does end 4-0 in a fantastic start for caretaker Aaron Danks in something where I don't think any of us saw this coming. And it looks like they've also announced Unai Emery, which we'll get into. But almost like the first thing that Aaron Danks did is he completely changed Villa's formation and lineup. And I don't know if just everyone hates Steven Gerrard to play so much better. But yeah, I mean, you saw Del Donka get his first start. Matty Cash was back in the lineup. They tried doing Konsa at right back for Fulham, and that did not work. So Konsa was
yeah,
back at center back, and Dendoncker and Douglas Luiz is kind of like the holding midfield, basically to be the protection for four attackers and Watkins, Berdia, Bailey, and Ings. And it seems Watkins and Bailey were so much better providing width and being wide creators than necessarily Watkins being asked to like be the lead guy. And they were able to feed off that. They were able to find Ings. I mean, easily the best game I think Bailey's had as a Villa player, and
yeah,
Bundia looked quite good. So,
yeah.
so,
Mm,
it got started within 2 minutes with Leon Bailey. It's another time where Brentford did not do
mm,
well defending a corner kick. Danny Ings is able to get a second one, also very good by Leon Bailey. I think the guy to maybe focus on is Ayer leaves his area to pressure Emi Buendia, and he shouldn't do that because um, that is what allows Leon Bailey to basically split Rasmussen and Ager by the space created there. If Ager just stays where he is, I don't think that goal even happens, or I don't think that the run is allowed to happen. But because Eamon Bradia is basically being marked by three guys already, he's not going anywhere, and Ager just he tries to be a little too ambitious. And Jeremy's talked about maybe he doesn't have the positional awareness to be a center back. That's one of those cases where
mm,
you maybe see where he's coming from. Um,
yeah.
and then
I don't. I also. Maybe you'll talk on it, but I was kind of confused of why Zanka was in there. Like center of the three center backs, he was the center one, and Ben Mee's been playing well. Ben Mee was on the bench. I
I
think I
was
would have gone Ben Mee
I was
here.
surprised by that too. Yeah, I think that it was not Brentford's first choice back line because the missing Pachin Janssen. Now it looks
Mm,
like they might be out with him. Maybe that's kind of the reason why they're struggling on these corner kicks. Uh,
maybe.
but
Mm,
yeah, I mean it's just and then basically within 14 minutes, Villa were able to get the third with Ager again is caught kind of holding on to Tyron Mings, pulling his shirt down. Again, it's soft, but it's something they've been consistent with, and yeah, it's just within 14 minutes it was 3-0. I was late to wake
yeah.
up this game. I had just put my stream on, and I was just like starting to see this, and I was like, what the hell? Jeremy was not quite pleased. And then probably the best goal, at least when it came to like open play, was the fourth goal. With and not because Ollie Watkins had basically three chances where it was pinball, but before Leon Bailey is able to just skate by three or four players down the wing, and then he has a wonderful cross to Watkins, able to find. So good link up play between them, and I think it was the first time we saw Leon Bailey played on the left wing. Sometimes he's mostly been played on the white with Watkins kind of forward. And so again, I do not know what Gerrard was doing if he had players able to do or able to look this way. But
Mm.
let's get started with what you thought, Rex.
Yeah, man, it's just Brentford seem to have kind of they've been having like some rough first halves. This whole year, like it started too with Leicester. They came back in that game, but I think they were down 2-0 at at the end of the first half.
Hmm.
So they do kind of sometimes they come out and they're just terrible in the first half. And if you give up 3 goals in the first 14 minutes, like you're not going to come back from that. It's really tough. So I mean, I'm a little better. I feel a little better about Brentford because they had that big win and then they were able to draw Chelsea. So it seems like they're able to, you know, get a point and at least get some results against the top teams. But it was another thing where like it was another instance where they should have probably built on the point that they got against Chelsea because you're playing an Aston Villa team that just lost their coach. Maybe that's part of the reason like Villa played the players played well, because Gerard was gone. And it was kind of
Well,
not
that's
necessarily the new manager bounce, but maybe a little bit. And the players kind of like went out and kind of took their aggression out on Brentford. But it was just another chance for Brentford to kind of like Liverpool, just build on two good results. And I mean, it just completely went the opposite way. And they've had a couple bad losses this year. And last year we didn't really see them lose this badly. They kind of were competitive in every game. So there's a little bit of a worry there for sure. And then just more goals on set pieces, more goals on corners that they concede.
mhm.
It's just it's this year and it's last year too. I mean, they got to figure that out because they could have possibly been in this game if they had done better at on defending corners. I mean, all season it's been they've been horrible. They've been decent scoring on crosses, but defending, oh, it's just dreadful. Like every corner you're worried. At every corner Brentford's defending, you're like this could be a goal scored on them.
It just felt like they were not prepared at all for how Villa were going to set up against them. I mean, 19 shots, 11 on target. That's just
Yeah.
that is wild. It just how did I watched. I didn't watch this game like fully live. Like I said, I turned it late, but I watched that a couple weeks ago. Them playing Nottingham Forest live. It was one of the worst games I think I've seen this
Mhm.
season. There was none of this. Um,
Yeah.
and they did look bright versus Chelsea a couple weeks ago. And so maybe you could have somewhat seen this coming, but it's just weird how Gerard had someone like Danny Ings who when healthy, he's been like a 15, 18 goal scorer. He
Yeah.
competed for the Golden Boot a couple years ago. And it's like the way that he was playing Danny Ings, it almost made me think, well, Danny Ings was about to be close to retirement. Danny Ings looked great. Brendia looked great. And it's just, for, Leon Bailey said something about that we're enjoying our football again. And when you hear stuff like that in post games, it's not a good thing. So it definitely feels
Yeah.
like
No.
canning Gerard was definitely the right call.
Maybe Gerard was just very like concerned about positionally where the players would be, and it kind of takes away the creativity of the players at times. So maybe he's just so tactically and structurally rigid that the players just like couldn't really be creative on the pitch. And then once that's gone and they do have the freedom to be creative, they definitely have the players to score goals. And yeah, you kind of saw it here. Maybe Gerard was kind of stifling them a little bit.
It's just they kept playing a 4-3-3. It seemed, and like Coutinho doesn't really fit that role. Buendia doesn't really either. Another thing that does is that kind of expose that you're only playing with one CDM essentially, and that six has to be amazing at cutting off everything else. And so in this
Yeah,
way, you're able to play with two. That kind of helps you at least in that respect. But another thing too is John McGinn, who's the captain of or Gerard made him captain. It's
yeah.
possible that players just did not like that. Ben Coutinho and Jacob Ramsey. So it was a different lineup and a different formation. So
Yeah, and we haven't seen much of Dodonker under Gerard, so maybe that's the new like double pivot, him and Louise. And we didn't see much. We didn't really see a lot of Louise either.
it's it sucked for Brentford because Luis got a red card versus Fulham, and I was like,
Yeah.
I texted Jeremy, I was like, oh, you guys are good. You don't have to worry about the new management bump or whatever because Jeremy was worried about this game even before it happened. And when I saw the lineup, I was like, wait, what the? How's Luis playing? And apparently he got rescinded.
Yeah.
He did like one of those like head bumps. I thought so.
Yeah,
Unlucky
not
day for
good.
Brentford, and just one of those days for Villa.
Yeah, ooh,
I mean,
maybe they'll turn things around. Who knows?
yeah, you mentioned the set pieces. That's if they don't fix that up, they are in a relegation race because the way that they're conceding. We talked about what Leeds are doing. That to me resembles what those other teams are looking at. And another thing too is the goal differential is starting to creep closer towards those other teams. With this result, they're finally I think they're like -3 now. Um,
Yeah.
and like most of the main three are like minus like 15, which is Brentford's not necessarily there yet. But I
Yeah.
think the person that or the team that's in like 17th or 18th, I think it's like -5 or no minus 8. So Brentford aren't
Mm,
necessarily there yet, but it just is. Again, it's not their main first choice back line, and
yeah.
another
And
thing
Hickey's
too,
out.
it just feels like they play so much different away from home than home,
Yeah. Well, the good news is looking at the schedule, they have Wolves and then Forest.
which is
So
Good way. Two ways.
Yeah,
Two ways to look at that because that's a chance for them to get some points and to do that. But if you don't, do you know who they play after that? The game before the World Cup.
yeah,
Yeah,
Man
it's Man
City.
City.
Ugh.
So, some chances for a chance for Brentford to kind of do what Fulham just did. You know, you take max points, you go up the table, or you might be sitting in a bad spot by the time
This
the World Cup happens.
and the schedule after the World Cup, like the I guess the new festive period, it's Tottenham, West Ham, and Liverpool all in basically a week. So yeah, I think
Oh
these two
no!
games, the Wolves and Nottingham Forest games, are pretty important for sure, especially with that coming up. After that, it gets a little easier. They have like Bournemouth, Leeds, Southampton, so it gets a little easier. But yeah, I mean, you would think they probably have to get the 3 points against Wolves, and then um, maybe a draw at least against Forest. Hopefully you win, and then Jeremy, we can breathe a little easier if they get these 6 points. I think.
Yeah, one of the negatives we talked about that a couple of weeks ago is if Forest does start to figure things out. You know, it's not going to be the team that we saw in the beginning of the season. And another thing
Yeah.
too, when I mentioned the goal differential, one of the worst teams, I think, is like on like -9 or no, -13, is Bournemouth, and that's because of the 9 goals that Liverpool scored. Like Bournemouth's kind of shaped
Mhm.
up a little bit. So
Yeah, they're in 14th with a -15. Well, I think too the scary thing is, it's so tight down there. We got 3 teams in the relegation zone with 9 points, and then Leicester has 11, Southampton have 12, and Brentford have 14. So like it's all really close. West Ham has 14, and they're 10th. And they're only 5 points above the relegation zone, and they're in 10th place. So yeah, it's scary for Brentford, especially because like some of these Fulham's doing really well. Some of these newly promoted teams aren't struggling, so we kind of don't know who's going to be relegated. I mean, Wolves probably,
well, that were
but other than that, I don't know.
that's a good way to transition and maybe try to speed this up a little bit. Um, because it feels like Wolves have lost something by not just sacking Bruno Lage. This doesn't look like a team that used to be. Like we talked about them being like a top 5 defense. It feels like
Yeah.
they've already lost that, and I think they've been a statement. They've already come out with a statement because the couple of guys that they wanted the QPR guy. It looks like they're going to stick with the caretaker for the rest of the year. And so I guess it's good for stability in some respects. I think they're waiting for World Cup, but at the same time, if this guy doesn't work out, you're going to be in a real bad shape. And I
Yeah.
mean, Leicester win 4-0. This is a absolute wild game because Wolves dominated in everything but scoring, and
Yeah. Weird.
Leicester only had 5 shots all game, 4 goals. I've never seen something like this.
And Wolves had 21 shots, no goals.
But to me, the big issue that I saw was the second goal. What was it? The second goal. Yeah. Well, the fourth goal is worrying because basically Wolves are trying to play from the back. Max Gilman has a really bad pass, and basically Leicester able to win the ball back and then get a free cross, but no one is marking Vardy. No one is even bothering it. Like it's stuff like that where that doesn't feel that doesn't feel like a top defensive side. And the third goal that Madison scores, it's a great shot by Madison, but again, it's either Semedo, it might be Traore. Traore is like close, and he's not getting a foot in. He's not being physical to knock Madison off the ball, and Nathan Collins is being way too lazy. Nathan Collins like falls for Vardy's run, and he moves, and that allows Madison to get the shot off. And even the second goal with Barnes, it's very bad by Johnny. Johnny just falls over, and that's the reason why Barnes is able to get free. And so you can give up the Tielemans goal. Tielemans is a wonderful hit, but the other 3 goals I think could have been defended better. So
Man, and Wolves, do you know how many goals they've scored in the Premier League this year? It's insane.
is it 3?
Five,
5.
five. They
Okay.
scored five. So like I'm just looking at their schedule, and this whole year, the only time they scored more than one goal was a cup game in August against Preston North End, and they scored two. So you're not. I mean, 5 goals. You're not going to win hardly any with that. I don't care how good your defense is. 5 goals. I mean, what are you going to do? Win 5 games 1-0? Well, it's not. It's not happening. And now their defense now the defense isn't as good as they were in the beginning of the year. So I don't know, man. I'm really worried. It's just a recipe for disaster.
It's good.
I guess the only
It's good news
the
for
only
Jeremy.
saving grace is yeah, good news. Yeah, because we maybe have our one relegation team like penciled in, but I mean, maybe like Jimenez can come back and get going. Maybe Douglas Costa can get going. Well, I mean, we kind of said that last week.
Missing
He
Neto
hasn't
as
gotten
well.
going.
Nesso might be able
Yeah,
to fire for
yeah.
them. Um,
Adama, maybe. I don't know. They have some options, but I mean, 5 goals is incredibly low. It would be interesting to go back and see, like, some of the what are the lowest scoring teams in the Premier League halfway through the season, and how many goals have they scored? Because I haven't seen this low of a tally, and we're getting close to like halfway through the season. I guess be
mm.
interesting to see how many goals they have, like, going into the World Cup because it's a historically low amount of goals being scored from them. I think.
And they're creating good chances. Like in this game, I mean, Leicester have defensive issues as well.
Yeah,
But
gosh.
I
If
mean,
you can't score against Leicester,
their XG was two. I mean, Costa at least had one where even he was amazed he didn't score it. I mean, it's a great a block by I think uh, Jefferson, the one of the red James Justin.
Justin.
Yeah.
Yeah, Justin.
But it's rough. I mean, for Leicester, I mean, you got 6 big points for the last 7 days. So that
Mhm.
helps. The win over Leeds helped. But at the same time, I mean, they are starting to get some clean sheets. I guess you can maybe say that. Do you maybe
Yeah.
think Ralph Hayes is working out for them?
Yeah, I think so. Defense starting to get a little better. I'm still worried about their defense. But more importantly for them is they kind of are starting to get their goal scoring players like back into form. Madison has been on
Mhm.
fire since he's come back. He's got 6 goals already. And then Barnes scored, so you need Barnes going. Thielman scored. He can get going maybe. I don't know. I mean, if you asked me 2 weeks ago if I was worried about them, I was very worried about them. But now I'm kind of not as worried about, which is weird, because it's been so quick. But
I'm I'm like
I do
iffy.
think they'll probably be in that relegation zone still, just because their defense
Yeah,
just isn't. They're not good enough. I don't think.
I think there are 3 teams worse than them. So I like as far as being worried about them, I think they'll be able to stay up because they do have quality to at least be able to finish some of these chances. But giving up
Yeah,
21 shots to Wolves, a team that we've talked about just can't score to save their lives, and then only having 5 shots all game. It's weird. You're not
that
gonna
is weird.
you're not gonna score 4 goals and do that. That doesn't seem sustainable to me.
No,
I feel like it's similar to when they scored 4 goals versus like Nottingham Forest, and a couple of them were like long shots and free kicks. I feel like I got a similar feeling, to be honest.
it's weird too. Like how like I'm looking at the bottom of the table, and all the teams around them have scored like 13 goals, 11 goals, and Leicester has 21 goals. They've scored more goals than Chelsea. They scored more goals than Newcastle, more goals than United even.
Well, they giving up
So yeah, there's potential.
20
Yeah,
plus.
they're getting up 24. Yeah, which isn't great. Yeah, not good at all. But at least they do have the goal scoring threat there, and if they can get just a little bit better on defense, they can score goals and maybe they can, win a couple like shootout games to stay above the zone. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think they're kind of that fourth to last team. There's 3 teams probably worse than them.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be tight at the bottom.
And
And
maybe
as long as none of our teams are down there, it's going to be fun for us too.
well, I don't want to. That's
I'm
true.
including Brentford as one of our teams.
Oh, okay,
Brentford's
I
in
was
there.
like,
Yeah.
Liverpool only five away.
Because
I feel.
Arsenal and Liverpool probably won't be down there, and hopefully Brentford won't either. Let's cross our fingers.
But maybe 2 teams that will is Everton and Crystal Palace. It's another one of these team. Both of these teams feel like a couple run here and there is going to make really change everyone's perspective because it feels like they're not built to be consistent. And so one of the negatives for Crystal Palace was they had to play this game without a Czech Decore, and I think
Mhm.
they really suffered from missing him. And then with Everton, they were able to get Calvin Lewin back. And I saw
Yeah,
in a couple of the
could be
goals,
huge.
you really saw how good he can be. So,
Mhm.
well, yeah, what were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, we've been kind of getting steadily more impressed with Everton as they've been playing. And I'm impressed by Everton. Like I was happy that they won the game 3-0 was surprising. But really it came away just feeling disappointed with Crystal Palace more in
Mhm.
this game than, being excited for Everton. I just Everton's defense isn't that great, and Palace have kind of been finding decent amount of scoring form with some of these guys. Olise, Zaha, Eduard. I was expecting more out of them offensively. Eberiche Eze was in there. Eze was in there too. Jordan Ayew. So it was kind of an attacking lineup. They really only had Milivojevic,
That's it.
something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
I never can pronounce his name.
Sounds
They
good.
only had him as the holding mid. So I really expect them to score more because that attacking lineup. If you don't score, you're gonna lose. And they kind of got countered, and Milivojevic couldn't hold it down by himself. So I was really impressed by Everton, but more just disappointed with Crystal Palace. Keep
Yeah.
expecting them to take that like next level with Vieira as coach,
I mean,
and
this might be a little I want to say narrative shifting, but I might have an ulterior motive, I guess I'll say, is I am going
Ooh.
to focus on Mark Gahey because we mentioned Chris Richards. Chris Richards has to be able to play over this guy because I mean Mark Gahey has shown he can be quality on the ball. He has a good eye for a pass as a passing center back. He is making way too many mistakes for me. A couple
Mhm.
weeks back, he was burned for pace by Patrick Bamford, who was just coming back from a hamstring injury. That was a warning sign. But in this one, I think he's at fault for the first two goals, maybe all three.
Mm.
Burned by pace. Just not burned by pace. He follows Calvert Lewin's run on the second one. He gets out of position. That was great at getting behind. On the first one, Calvert Lewin just basically just I don't want to say bowls him over, but Mark Gahey is right there, and he just falls over for the first goal. And then on the third, he gets caught by allowing Alex Iwobi to just run behind him, and then
Yeah.
he's not quick enough to react to the back heel, and so it's again one of those things where just if one player is going to be making individual mistakes, that's going to show up regardless of where you are on the table. And I think in a
Especially at center back.
couple of weeks, I think we've seen Gahey have a couple of O's.
Yeah, which is weird because it seemed in the beginning of the season like Gahey and Anderson were a pretty good partnership, and maybe it still can be because Anderson's really good, and I think Gahey can be good. He just does make errors, and he's a young player. But yeah, man, like you said, if your center back is making errors, that's going to cost you goals because you can't be making errors at your own end of the pitch.
And it really was like really good play by Everton on a couple of the goals. The movement by Calvert Lewin for the first two, you saw immediately what they've been missing. Good length
Mm.
of play. He was running with the ball. The first goal came from him actually winning the ball back, so he showed a little defensive work rate. If they can just keep him healthy, Everton won't have anything to worry about.
Yeah, and Iwobi 2 assists. He was kind of playing like he was kind of playing the number 10 there, behind Calvert-Lewin, and it seemed to be pretty good. 2 assists for Iwobi and a goal for Lewin. So look forward to seeing that in the future. That could be Iwobi's new position.
And
Could
I think
be attacking mid.
And I think it's interesting that Lampard stopped doing this Idrissa Gueye CDM by himself. He paired him with Onana, and I think that helped him out a little bit as well.
Yeah,
Um, and
yeah,
we'll
it's
finally
a good double pivot.
we'll move on to West Ham Bournemouth. How are we for time? We have to hurry up. This one ends 1-0. It wasn't a lot in the actual game that happened, but really, we'll probably. I mean, the obvious thing to talk about is the goal, just not because of how it's scored, but it is just wild that VAR allowed this to stay.
Yeah,
To be honest, I mean, it's a scrappy goal off a corner kick, but I mean the ball here hits Kier's hand, very
yeah.
obvious, and it was just wild how it passed the VAR check. Wild it wasn't even called in real time. So
Yeah, I don't get it. And he had his hands like like he had his hands in front of his body, like to getting his hands kind of out of like the side area, but he still had his hands in front of him. He could have put his hands behind his back, but yeah, man, I don't know like what they're doing because it totally hit his hand, and it's just we don't get any consistency from VAR, and
that's
we don't
that's
know
the
what a
main problem,
handball is.
the consistency.
Mhm.
Yeah, because the
And
VAR
this was a decision that like completely turned the game around for Bournemouth.
it did because West Ham had a number of shots. At least I think it was like 11 in the first half. I mean, Bournemouth were definitely sitting back, but only a couple on target. Like I don't remember their keeper actually really having to make a number of big saves.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I mean, this was one of those when it rains it pours because you get the decision to go against you. You later got a handball to go against you as well, so that's the reason why it's 2-0.
Yeah.
But really, the main thing was losing Dominic Solanke and losing their keeper. I mean, it seemed like their
Yeah.
keeper is actually pretty good with the ball at his feet, and the
Neto
guy
was
they brought
good.
in was a lot different. So
Yeah,
I mean,
Neto's been playing well. And well, I mean, just one thing that I was kind of just disappointed about, I guess, and I don't think it will ever change in the Premier League, but I would really like to kind of put the refs, put VAR, the people operating VAR, put them like up and face the press after the game, so
I
they
would like
can,
that too. Yeah.
so like a press member could ask like, hey, what was the decision in the VAR booth? Like, what did you guys see that didn't overturn that handball? And then we could actually like find out, in the ref's words, like why this was actually not a handball, and then maybe we could kind of figure out, the thinking of the refs. But that's never going to happen. I don't know. It seemed like we kind of were studying out what a handball was for a couple weeks, and then bam, back to not knowing what the heck a handball.
Because a number of these things too, sometimes they try to say that it's on the ref making an error, essentially. So it's like one of those where they feel some of these times a guy will go to the ground and a ball will like hit his hand and they'll deem it's too close, so that's not why. That's why it won't be overruled. But
Wasn't
if
intentional.
but if the
Yeah.
ref calls it that way, usually it stays. And like another
Mhm.
issue too is so that happened for the second goal. That's the reason why they were given a PK. But right before that, I was quite convinced that a ball like touched it might have been Ben Johnson's hand pretty blatantly. That I feel could have gone to review, and that might have made the game tied 1-1. So
Mhm.
like Bournemouth got screwed left and right. I want to say, and the only thing I'll say here is their coach handled that a lot better in the post game than I would have. I would have been steaming.
Yeah. Well, he was mad after the game. I kind of caught him. He was going up to the refs and he was basically walking away and pointing at the refs, saying, "You guys cost us that game. Basically, that decision cost us the game." So yeah, it was good on him to calm down because I mean, yeah, if it was me, I would have gotten fined because I would have just called out the refs,
Mhm.
and I would have gotten fined a lot of money.
I'll be
So
like,
yeah, it was good. It was good on him, but
I'll
he
be,
did. I mean, I was glad to see him yell at the ref at the end at least and get a little bit that anger off his chest towards the ref for
I'd be
making a
like,
horrible
Mike Dean,
call.
I know where your home had. Well, I shouldn't say that. The head of
Ooh,
VAR, Mike Dean. Um,
yeah,
I, I mean, to focus
I
on
don't get
West
it.
Ham, it's one of those things where unlucky not to get something versus Liverpool. Allison saved Bowen's PK, but losing Bakata, you really see they're a rough watch again. To be honest, like they're
Yeah.
missing some of that creativity. I'm curious if maybe Moyes can try Lanzini in a pivot next to Rice instead of Suchek, because I saw this in the
Hmm.
conference game. That actually worked fairly well, though they ended up giving up 3 goals in the second half, so maybe that's why. But I
Yeah,
thought
but they're
Rice.
they're undefeated in the conference league, right? I
I,
think they've won every game.
that I don't know, but that's when they
Maybe
started
maybe
playing.
maybe one draw.
That's when they started playing Skamaka. But
Yeah.
it's annoying how Rice or Moyes won't play Skamaka and Antonio together. He seems to have to switch them on and off.
Mhm.
But another thing too is I thought Rice was actually spectacular. There have been times when he's been played kind of further forward in the two. This time it seemed like Suchek
Mhm.
was the more offensive guy, and I mean Rice had a 99% pass accuracy and
Ooh.
created 3 chances. Like not a
Mhm.
lot of people on West Ham showed up. He did.
Yeah,
So
Ben Rama kind of stepped up too, and he's been a streaky player for sure. But he scored the PK, and I thought he played pretty well. He played better than he has been. And yeah, I agree though. I would like to see Skamaka and Antonio together somehow. I don't know. I don't know how they would do it. Maybe yeah, maybe Lanzini behind the two. I don't know, but it would be interesting to see the two of them play together.
yep. Because I feel like they've tried. Well, yeah, he tried a 4-3-3 3-4. He tried wingbacks couple of weeks ago when he played. That's a game they lost Paqueta in. So
Yeah.
they can play a back three, and that would be maybe a way to do it. I mean, quickly to say a last word on Bournemouth. You mentioned how losing Solanke could be pretty big for them because he was like the one outlet they had. Uh, they might have to rely on this youngster Jaden Anthony, who came on in the second half. I remember
Mhm.
him scoring a pretty big goal to help them beat Fulham a couple weeks back. So maybe something to see there. But because other than that, you have Philip Billing. Kiefer Moore came on, but he's not the same player. You kind of fear for Bournemouth a little bit. Jeremy was celebrating, like
Yeah,
he just won.
they could be that other team penciled in there in the relegation zone.
He was celebrating like Brentford had just won a game with some of this news. So,
Good call
anyways,
on Jane Anthony though. Good call on him because I mean he played a lot in the championship last year. He scored 8 goals and had 7 assists. So yeah, maybe he's someone that can step up. He played well. I know it's a championship, but he played well last year, and he's a young player. And he's already got a goal in the Premier League in 8 appearances. So yeah, I mean maybe he can step up. Maybe it's a good opportunity for him.
and that said, we're over 2 hours, so that's unfortunate. Anyways, Rex, thanks for joining me again. Always good
Thanks for having me.
do a review. Well, I mentioned when I brought you in, I was like, well, yeah, thanks for joining me, and you're the co-host essentially. So
Yeah, I
can't
guess.
can't do the show by myself. I'm not. I would not be able to hear my. Sometimes I can ramble on, but I can't listen to myself just nonstop, just for that long. So yeah. Anything you want to end on though?
No, man, I'm excited. We got another week where we have like soccer on every day with the Champions League and Europa League. So
Yeah, champs.
we got, yeah, we got, and I love the show they do too. Who is it? It's like Micah Richards, Thierry Henry, and Carragher. I love that post game show. They
That
just
is
like make
pretty
fun of
good.
each other the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I'm excited about the football. Love some Champions League. It's the one benefit of the compacted schedule is Champions League is almost every week now.
True. Yeah, that's a good call.
Just
Unfortunately,
more
it's
football,
leading
baby.
leading to some injuries, but yeah,
Yeah, but at least we get our football.
there we go. Yeah, Liverpool a big game, really big game for Ajax. If they can just draw, I think they might be able to secure getting second. And then good luck going against Napoli and that terrorizing team. But if they
Yeah,
screw
it's
up
gonna be
versus
a
Ajax,
goal
they're
fest.
going to have to get a result versus this super team on Napoli.
Mm.
The more times Liverpool have to play Napoli, I'm gonna have to learn Kricha Hotascalia. His name.
There we go. There we go.
All right, man.
Just call him the goal scorer.
I guess that's it. So for all of us at the reserve squad, you stay squatty.
Stay squatty, folks.
Stop.